Chapter 57, A Long Overdue Battle. Previously lucky girl Naruto muttered. I still have the lazy ass to fight, I know, Shikamaru replied. What a drag now, so Shikaken Hinata began, making the sleeper lazily open a single eye. Have a plan against Naruto-kun? Hinata asked. Oh yes, Shikamaru quickly replied, waving his hand dismissively, though Hinata noticed the small hint of sarcasm behind his tone. I plan to get rid of Naruto within the first minute of match, Shikamaru explained, and Hinata just chuckled. I bet, Hinata replied with amusement. No faith in my skills, Shikamaru said. Oh no, you misunderstand me, Hinata began. I have extreme faith in your abilities, your dedication and commitment on the other hand. Not so much, Hinata replied cheekily. Shikamaru just grinned before closing his eyes and yawning loudly. And you, Naruto-kun? Hinata turned towards the blonde who was watching with talk between her and Shikamaru with amusement. Who knows what that lazy ass has planned? Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Naruto and Shikamaru to the arena be called. Time to face the music, Shikamaru muttered as he got up and stretched his sore limbs. Arena Senju Naruto of Konoha against Naruto Shikamaru of Konoha. Both contestants ready? B asked, and both nodded. Begin. Before Naruto could even crouch or take a step forward, Shikamaru made a timeout sign with his arms. What? Naruto asked, confused. Can I have the first move? Shikamaru asked. What? I guess, Naruto replied, not understanding what Shikamaru wanted. Hypothetically, Shikamaru started, and Naruto raised an eyebrow. If I were to use your patented Oiroke no Jutsu, sexy jutsu, Hinata version, you wouldn't faint, right? Shikamaru asked. No? Naruto answered skeptically, with clear doubt in his voice. Oh well, I guess I give up then, Shikamaru said, and Naruto blinked. He turned towards B, who also blinked. You ain't surrendering, fool, B said. I am, and I just did, Shikamaru said as he walked out of the arena. Well, I guess you win, B muttered beneath his breath. Winner, Senju Naruto of Konoha with crowd. Same old, Shikaken Hinata said, shaking her head in amusement. He pulled the same stunt at the Chunin exams, Hinata said as she watched most of the crowd facepalm at Shikamaru's actions. And I'm back, Shikamaru said as he walked in. I told you I would be done with him under a minute, Faith, right? Hinata asked, and Shikamaru nodded. He sat in the same spot and immediately closed his eyes, wishing for some much-needed sleep. Hinata to the arena be called. Kage's box. Finally we will get some action, the Raikage said, correcting his posture and slightly bending forward to give the incoming match his full attention. This won't be a normal match, you know? Jiraiya asked, never looking down from the arena. The Raikage hummed in curiosity, turning towards Jiraiya. The pervert seemed to be reminiscing about something, not even acknowledging the Raikage's attention. There has never been, to my knowledge, a match between two Kage-level shinobi merely for entertainment purposes, Jiraiya chuckled, and the Raikage paid close attention to his words. And I doubt they will think of this as a simple show for the crowd. I have no doubts that it will be very entertaining, but for them it will have a special meaning. Did you know that they have been training side by side for years? Jiraiya asked and paused, but continued before the Raikage could comment. They trained together since they were 8 years old. At that age, I playing with wooden kunai and jumping in the mud, Jiraiya chuckled, and the Raikage snickered. They had the village against them, both shouldering hate, misery, distaste. They were forced to grow harshly, almost like in times of war, and grow up they did. Brave, loyal, strong, each one in their own way. Naruto against the village, Hinata against her family, joined by their misfortune and driven together by their will to overcome their obstacles and become something more. It almost sounds like those crappy romance books you find at the stores regarding misfit people who eventually become something. Jiraiya laughed before quieting down. But those two are special, and I believe that together they will change the world. I trained them both for 3 years, and together they can achieve the impossible. They complement each other in every way. It's kind of strange, really, growing up as both rivals and lovers, but I think that it only made them stronger, in both ways, Jiraiya said in a soft tone. His voice was filled with pride. But I am just an old pervert reminiscing about his students, Jiraiya laughed. After all, this is their story to tell with crowd. Final match of this year's Jounin exams, be said, and the crowd cheered as both Naruto and Hinata took their place facing each other. Senju Naruto of Konoha ready? B asked and Naruto nodded. Senju Hinata of Konoha ready? Yes, Hinata replied. Begin be called for the start of the match, but neither Naruto nor Hinata made a single movement. Not a step forward, no shifting of their weight, not even a blink. Our first fight as a married couple, Naruto grinned while Hinata just laughed softly before quieting down. Do you remember it? Hinata asked in a low voice. She seemed to almost whisper her question, but Naruto heard her nonetheless. Naruto smiled as a small memory jumped into his mind. I promise Heineheim that I will one day remove that seal. I promise that I'll protect you and together we will show the village what a couple of losers can do, Naruto said, smiling as he reminisced at that particular time. You do remember? Hinata smiled with her eyes almost watering. They weren't just words, Hinata-kun. I meant every single thing I said, Naruto replied. You know that I always considered myself your equal. I always strive to be as brave as you, as strong as you, but I stopped that 1 year ago, Hinata said, and Naruto rose an eyebrow in confusion. When your eyes reached their final level, I knew that no matter how hard I tried, how hard I pushed myself, I could no longer reach you, Hinata said, and Naruto was about to say something but Hinata stopped him. And the thing is, I am okay with that, Hinata smiled softly. I always pushed myself and thought that if I was anything below you, then the village would see me as just Hyuga Hinata, the disowned daughter of the Hyuga clan. But I was wrong. Even though I will never reach you, they see me as Senju Hinata. I'm not shadowed by marrying you or belonging to the Senju clan. They respect me, they acknowledge me by my talents in taijutsu, my Byakugan, and medicine. I came to the conclusion that the village and the world already sees me as something, and now all I want is to make you proud of me, Hinata finished, and Naruto sat there gobsmacked. Ready? Hinata asked as she took her stance. I was always proud of you, Naruto thought as he launched himself forward, picking up dust as their fists met with a bang. With crowd, well, Shikamaru said, getting up. I'm leaving, Shikamaru said and started walking away. You are not watching the match? Tenten asked, having regained consciousness and being allowed by the medics to watch the matches. No, why? Tenten asked in disbelief. Safety, Shikamaru simply replied. What? Tenten asked, furrowing her eyebrows in confusion. She's going all out and I value my life, Shikamaru said. We are Sa-Tenten was broken from her explanation when the stands seemed to rumble. She quickly turned to the arena to see that the match had begun and Naruto and Hinata had both fists against one another. See that? I'm leaving, Shikamaru said and walked away as the stands vibrated again. Oh dear, Tenten muttered when she noticed specks of dust falling from the concrete ceiling. Arena Naruto and Hinata were both engaged in a highly technical taijutsu match. For now it all about the stances, the blocks and counters, not that the punches didn't have power behind them, I assure they did. But for now it was matter of skill and not power. Hinata threw a fast left jab only to Naruto parry her strike. Naruto simply tapped her arm away and quickly replied with a jab of his own, straight to her head, aiming for her left temple, but Hinata quickly countered with the same, locking each other's arms. The ground rumbled and cracked as both struggled to overpower the other, his glowing red eyes staring straight into Hinata's silver Byakugan, who also was already activated. Hinata's arms suddenly turned to the same blue gel he had seen in the previous match. Naruto stumbled forward, surprised by Hinata's sudden disengage. His eyes widened when he noticed Hinata tilting her head back and quickly bringing it forward, trying to headbutt him straight on. Now that's a woman who doesn't mind playing rough, Naruto thought to himself as he used his Kamui to phase through Hinata. As he passed through her, he quickly turned around with a spin kick, only to simply be blocked. Hinata hadn't even turned around and blocked a blind kick to her backside with a single hand, courtesy of the 360 degrees of vision from the Byakugan. Hinata swiftly turned around, ducking swiftly as her right fist seemed to gain a blue hue. Naruto's eyes widened when he saw the chakra build up within her fist. Hinata extended her right arm heading for a right swing, her fist seemed to almost whistle with the speed it carried. Naruto raised his left arm, intending to intercept her attack. Just before her attack connected, Naruto used his free arm's hand to support his defending arm, knowing the attack would be powerful. Hinata's fist crashed into Naruto with a loud, resounding bang, forcing Naruto back a few inches, his feet dragging through the ground as he was pushed back. I'm not blocking another one of those, Naruto thought, gritting his teeth as he jumped backwards. He lightly shook and flexed his left arm, trying to get rid of the pain and the lingering stinging sensation. He looked up to see Hinata raising her leg and smashing it into the ground, ripping out a huge boulder of the ground. With a single hand she picked up the boulder and hurled it towards Naruto. "Oh hell," Naruto muttered as he charged a Rasengan and smashed it against the boulder, pulverizing the stone. He looked up to see that Hinata had disappeared. He backflipped from his position as Hinata shot from underground, her right fist prepared for an uppercut, her punch missing his chin by a few inches. As he was backflipping, Naruto tried to kick her chin in reply, only for to simply tilt her head backwards just enough to dodge it, no wasted movements. Hakushu Air Palm Katun, Gokakyu no Jutsu, great fireball technique. Naruto countered Hinata's air palm with a powerful fireball. The fireball easily ripped through her wind attack and continued towards the target. Kaiten Hinata was enveloped in a spinning shroud of chakra. The fire crashed against Hinata's defense and was quickly put out by her spinning effect. As the dust settled down from her defensive move, both Naruto and Hinata stared at each other before moving forward again. They met again with a bang, their fists blurring towards each other at blinding speeds. Naruto could track every single one thanks to his Sharingan, and Hinata could see his muscles preparing for the strike, giving her a heads up. Hinata's fist glowed once again, and this time she sent her punch straight forward, reverberating through the air. Bang! Naruto sidestepped her punch, making it hit the arena walls head-on. The stone wall screeched almost like wood cracking. A fissure started from the impact place and spread all the way to the top, making heavy chunks of stone fall to the ground and leaving a large opening on the walls. Her strength is just ridiculous, and she's not even using senjutsu. Naruto shook his head in thought. Kagebox held the Raikage side when he noticed part of the arena walls collapsing. "At this pace they will bring the whole place down," the Raikage muttered while Jiraiya just chuckled. "They certainly aren't pulling any punches. Get it?" Jiraiya laughed while he shook his head at the lame pun. "See," the Raikage said. "Raikage-sama?" C asked, leaving his position as bodyguard and kneeling on front of his leader. "Call the ANBU barrier division. Have them set up a small barrier around the outside of the arena walls," the Raikage ordered, and C nodded as she shined away. "A little too much?" Jiraiya asked. "I'm not taking any chances." Naruto jumped backwards to avoid the falling chunks of rock from the walls. Hinata stayed put, simply sidestepping the rocks. Once the dust cloud had settled, the arena now supported a brand new opening to the outside. Naruto narrowed his eyes when he saw Hinata roll her sleeves up and bend down to the ground. His eyes widened when he saw Hinata place her hands around the largest chunk of collapsed wall and lifted the heavy chunk of wall, rising it above her head. "This is ridiculous, that has to weigh almost 40 tons. She can lift a house without her Byakugan, strength of 100 technique, or senjutsu. Truly amazing. I wonder what her limit is," Naruto thought to himself in disbelief. He gulped when he saw Hinata leaning backwards and flinging the large rock towards him with surprising speed. Naruto bent his knees and held his ground as the rock approached, casting a shadow over him. With a flick of a wrist, 2 chains shot from both hands and wrapped themselves against the incoming meteorite. Naruto jumped to the side and channeled chakra into his feet. Naruto gripped his chains tightly as he swung the wall around and sent it back towards Hinata. Hinata cocked her fist and slammed it against the wall, vaporing it into dust. She looked up to see Naruto running towards her with the space swirling in front of him. Naruto took his staff from his pocket dimension and swirled around him. In reply, Hinata channeled chakra to her wrist storage seals and took out her twin daggers. Both weapons met with a clang. They screeched with several orange sparks flying loose as both metals weapons scraped against one another. Naruto twirled his staff for a horizontal swing, making Hinata duck. She quickly got up and pushed forward, her daggers going first in forcing Naruto to step back, her daggers clipping a few of strands of his hair. Naruto backflipped and held his staff horizontally. He gripped the staff and simply tapped his end. Arg! Hinata screamed as the staff suddenly expanded, growing exponentially in length and slamming against her stomach. Hinata's metal chestplate took most of the hit, but she was still sent flying. She twirled midair and landed gracefully on the ground. "I should have known that wasn't a simple staff," Hinata grumbled and fought as she adjusted her armor and got up. She watched in fascination as the staff started floating and spinning above Naruto's hand, slowly increasing in speed. The staff started changing shape and shrinking, taking the form of a single, pitch-black, perfectly spherical ball. This ball started floating around Naruto, and split into two. Each individual ball started elongating as if taking the shape of the staff again, but this time their new form had hilts and razor-sharp edges. They had taken the form of two twin, straight, one-edged swords. "One, come," Naruto said, pointing a single sword towards Hinata, who grinned and shot forward. Cling-clang, both swords clashed against Hinata's twin daggers with a deafening clash. Hinata's daggers glowed a light blue as she performed in quick and powerful swing with her right dagger. Her eyes widened when Naruto simply blocked her weapon. "My dagger was laced with wind chakra, even though it's my secondary nature it should have sliced right through," Hinata thought to herself in confusion as she parried a strike. Hinata stepped back and threw both daggers into the air. She cocked her right fist and slammed it forward. Naruto brought his twin swords in an X shape and blocked her punch. Taking advantage of her forward momentum, Naruto withdrew one of his blades and flexed it forward, piercing through her chest plate and straight through her stomach. He blinked and his breathing hitched when he noticed his sword embedded in Hinata's body, with the other end protruding from her back. Even the crowd seemed to gasp in shock and surprise. Naruto looked in shock but noticed that Hinata wasn't in pain but rather smirking. "Suka no Jutsu, water transformation jutsu," Hinata smirked as she pushed his extended arm deeper into her stomach, burying the hilt of the sword and his own hand into her. Naruto didn't even stop her with his shock, and before he could understand what happened, his right arm was trapped. Hinata smiled as she caught her daggers and swung both arms forward in a scissor attack. Naruto had to think quickly on his feet since he had only one arm available to defend against two daggers. "Chidori Nagashi," Naruto said, and Hinata's eyes widened. She quickly dropped her jutsu and completely liquefied, dropping to the ground in a puddle of water. The water quickly rushed away and stopped a few feet from Naruto. The water started to clod together and growing in height until it took the shape of Hinata. "Nifty little jutsu you got there," Naruto said as he rested both swords on each shoulder. "Thank you, Naruto-kun. This is the defensive jutsu I picked up back in Kiri and I've been working on it ever since," Hinata explained. "I got the idea after seeing your Kamui, since not all of us can have overpowered eyes," Hinata said as she dashed forward once again. Kageboxo Ho Jiraiya cheered and nearly jumped from his seat when he saw Hinata's new jutsu. "I always knew that girl had a good head on her shoulders," Jiraiya grinned. "Very interesting," the Raikage mused. "I always had the idea that jutsu was the Hozuki clan's bloodline. It's a common misconception," Jiraiya replied, making the Raikage turn to him. "That is the Hozuki clan's secret technique and not their bloodline. Much similar to the gentle fist taijutsu style, you don't actually need the Byakugan eye to use it," Jiraiya explained. "Though I wonder where she got it?" Jiraiya asked in afterthought. "She partook in the bloodline war back in Kiri. Everything was chaos back there. I wouldn't be surprised if she picked up a couple stray scrolls from there, and like you said, she has a good head on her shoulders," I said, and Jiraiya was surprised. "How do you know that she was in the war?" Jiraiya asked cautiously. "If I remember correctly, only Naruto and the Dragons of the Leaf were in combat come now," Jiraiya-sama the Raikage replied in amusement. "The Leaf Village isn't the only one with a spy network around. We are not as blind as you see us," the Raikage explained. "You got me there," Jiraiya said, chuckling. "Besides, when Naruto is somewhere then she isn't too far away. If I'm not mistaken she would be the purple dragon. With Naruto being the silver dragon and Sabaka no Gara, the Ichibi Jinchuriki being the brown dragon," the Raikage explained, and Jiraiya nodded, surprised by the accuracy of Kumo's intel. "Although those two," the Raikage said, pointing towards the blue and green dragon behind Jiraiya, "along with the rest of the group, remain a mystery to us. I don't suppose you could enlighten us?" the Raikage innocently asked. "I do believe they are about to pick up the pace," Jiraiya said, motioning to the arena. The Raikage knew that Jiraiya intently shifted the focus of the conversation but made no reference to it and simply turned to the arena. Arena Katan Goka Makyaku, Great Fire Annihilation. Naruto's trademark fire jutsu burst from his mouth in a colossal wave of hot fire. The barrage of fire scorched the grounds as it barreled towards Hinata, who was already blurring through hand seals. Suetun Daibakusui Showa, Great Exploding Water Wave, Hinata replied to Naruto's fire jutsu by using her strongest multi-purpose water technique. She pumped her lungs with chakra and then released it. A magnificent wave of water poured from her mouth, forcing her to rise in the air by the force of it. Hinata stood on top of the water wave as if ridding it. The water marched forward, crushing anything beneath it and clashed against the wall of fire. Naruto poured more chakra into his technique, making his fire start to change from regular orange to an almost pure white due to the heat released. They both stopped their techniques, seeing that they were neutralizing themselves out. Although Hinata's water technique should have the advantage, she didn't have the capacity to simply pour more chakra into her technique, unlike Naruto, who was always renowned for his unending batteries. The steam from the technique was so much that it clouded everything in the arena, making all of the audience blind. The steam started to overflow over the walls, but it showed no sign of starting to dissipate. "Do you see anything?" a spectator asked to the person sitting next to him, who simply shook his head in denial. "How are we supposed to watch the match now? I can barely see my hands." The sucks cling clang. All of the audience's rambling was broken from the metal sounds coming from the arena. Even with all of the steam, Naruto and Hinata were still going at it strong. Suddenly, a silence overtook the arena. The crowd's breathing hitched in anticipation until two loud shouts broke their stupor. "Kochios no Jutsu, summoning technique, Kochios no Jutsu, summoning technique." Both Naruto and Hinata called out their jutsu at the same time. The steam that once clouded the arena was pushed back due to pure air displacement. The crowd's eyes widened in shock and surprise at the face of the two monsters standing in the middle of the arena, each summoned with their respective summoner on top of their head. "Thank you for coming, Katsuyu-sama," Hinata said from the top of her slug summon, the boss of the Slug Clan. "No problem at all," Hinata-kun, Katsuyu replied. "Who are you? You are fighting Naruto-kun," Katsuyu said. "Thank you for the assistance," Hinata said, and looked up to see Naruto on top one very large fox. The fox in fact looked a lot like the Kyuubi himself, although it possessed nowhere the size of the 9 tails. He was just about the size of Katsuyu herself, rusty red fur with piercing red eyes and black vertical slits. Black ear tips and legs, white underbelly coupled with a single bushy tail with a very distinctive dark blue color tip. "It's the first time you have summoned me, Naruto-sama," the fox replied in his deep voice. "Sorry about that, Kentaro," Naruto replied, rubbing the back of his head. "For a moment I thought you would summon the Kyuubi," Hinata replied as she readied herself. "Even I'm not crazy enough to summon Kurama into such small arena," Naruto replied. "You are right, of course. These people are not worthy of gazing upon my magnificent self," Kurama said from his mind, making Naruto sweat drop. "Zeshin Ensen, acid slime," Katsuyu said as she released a highly concentrated acidic paste upon Naruto and Kentaro. With all the dexterity of a fox, Kentaro simply sidestepped the acid as it splashed into the ground, melting the earth and rock. Kentaro snarled, showing his point and sharp fangs as she charged forward. Kentaro's tail started crackling with lightning as he picked up the pace and dashed forward. Kentaro's head started glowing blue and suddenly he blurred forward, leaving a blue trail of electricity behind. Kaminaririo, lightning charge, Katsuyu threw herself to the side as Kentaro swooped past her at blinding speeds. Seeing that he missed, Kentaro stopped and turned around, jumping backwards to avoid an array of shuriken from Hinata. Kentaro swung around with his tail sparkling once again. "Rabi, lightning tail," Kentaro said as he spun and slammed his tail into Katsuyu, splitting her body in half. Kentaro started walking slowly, bearing his fangs around Katsuyu's body as it burst in hundreds of smaller slugs and slowly reformed a few feet away. "Dodge!" Naruto yelled, telling Kentaro to jump to the side as Hinata dropped from the sky with her leg raised. Kentaro watched as Hinata's kick smashed into the arena and left a crater behind. Kentaro snarled as he coiled and jumped forward, clawing at Katsuyu, who slithered away from him. Her wounds sizzling away in a matter of seconds. Kasen, light beam, Kentaro opened his mouth and released a small lightning bolt towards Katsuyu. The bolt ripped through the ground and smashed against the walls, leaving a small hole in them. "Suetun Mizurappa, wild water wave," Hinata said as she opened her mouth and released a stream of water right against Kentaro, who was unable to dodge. Kentaro was slightly pushed back but held his ground, shaking his head and body to get rid of the water. "Naruto-sama," Kentaro said, shivering, and Naruto understood the meaning. With their fur wet, foxes can't regulate their body heat, causing a rapid drop in their core temperature. On my mark, use your strongest lightning jutsu, Naruto said, and Kentaro nodded, charging up with his blue tail slightly glowing. Now Suetun Daibakusui Showa, great exploding water wave, Naruto said, using the same water jutsu that Hinata had used earlier, and released a gigantic wave of water against Katsuyu, who didn't anywhere to dodge in the arena. Kaminari Kitsune, lightning fox, Kentaro shouted as his fur seemed to stand on point and sparkle. From his body shot an almost identical clone of him, but completely made of pure lightning. Arg Katsuyu screamed as the electrified water wave crashed on her, delivering a brutal lightning move directly at her. Hinata jumped away from her summon and high into the walls to avoid the jutsu. Katsuyu didn't take long to disappear in smoke. "I'll be going now," Naruto-sama, Kentaro said. "You can go, and thank you," Naruto said as Kentaro disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Both Naruto and Hinata jumped into the ground, standing on top of the water that stood a few inches from the earth itself, slowly washing away through the various cracks on the ground. With crowd amazing, Tenten whispered, mesmerized by the battle playing itself in front of her eyes. "So this is a battle between two Kage-level shinobi. They don't seem to want to stop anytime soon," Rin said. "I don't think they get to spar like this many times," Tenten said. "You call this a spar?" Ran gave a high-pitched screech of indignation and quickly blushed at her actions, making Tenten slightly snicker. Shikamaru was right. "I don't think this place can take much more of this," Tenten said, looking at the numerous craters on the ground, several cracks along the walls, not to mention the huge chunk that was missing. "Tsunade-sama is renowned for her strength. It is said that she can bring mountains down with a single punch," Rin said. "We can already see that here," Tenten said, pointing at the walls. "Those walls are reinforced with hard stone, coupled with metallic frame on the inside and a high tensile fabric all around to prevent collapse and withstand heavy strikes," Tenten explained, and look at it, Tenten chuckled. "She brought the whole wall down and picked it up like it was paper or something. I don't think the Raikage will be much happy about that." "I guess not," Ren replied. "I guess it would be wise not to antagonize her," Taiseki muttered in thought, looking at Hinata. "What the hell is happening, arena? Shall we increase the pace?" Hinata asked, and Naruto nodded. Both started leaking out chakra as their auras skyrocketed, their chakra saturating the air. Everyone in the stands and most shinobi cringed at the feeling they got. It was like having tons of pressure against their chest, preventing from breathing. They almost felt like ants at the face of their chakra, each one surrounded by an almost visible aura of chakra. Their hair flapped wildly, the wind rustled, and even the water was vibrating. Hinata poured more chakra, intending on matching Naruto on every way. She started gaining a dim purple aura around her, one that would put Orochimaru himself to shame in both the sinister feeling of the color itself but the power and strength of her chakra. Her hair rose into the air, her Byakugan eyes seemed to glow, her armor rattled with her shoulder armor plates flapping wildly. Hinata's chakra started shaping around her as she started hand seals. Hitsuji, ram seal, hands together vertically with left thumb on top. Her aura seemed to expand in volume. Inu, dog seal, her left hand laid flat on top of her right fist. Her aura started gaining a vibrant shade of purple, not enough to avoid gazing upon her, but enough to be uncomfortable. Now, rat seal, both hands together vertically with left thumb on the outside. Her aura increased in density as more chakra was poured onto the technique. Mi, snake seal, both hands clasped together with left thumb on the outside. The water beneath Hinata started bubbling, almost like it was boiling itself. The day itself started getting dimmer, the sun slowly vanishing away as clouds started gathering and forming high above the arena. Tatsu, dragon seal, hands clasped together vertically with baby fingers forming a triangle. Hijitsu, Mugen no Aim, secret technique, endless rain, Hinata said as she finished her technique, and the sky seemed to almost roar. A fierce gust of wind swept by as a thunder illuminated the arena. The sun, blocked by a dark sheet of clouds, clouding what was once a beautiful day into a stormy one. Violent rain, fierce winds, blinding thunders, words that could barely describe the pinnacle of Hinata's secret technique, summoned at the top of her strengths. She had brought forth the biggest storm anyone had ever laid eyes upon. Water poured out of the sky almost like an ocean, drenching both Hinata and Naruto in a matter of seconds. Some girls don't like water because it ruins their hair. This did not apply to Hinata, who seemed to be in heaven in the middle of the storm. She closed her eyes and looked at the dark sky, savoring as the cold water hit her face, the icy wind rushing around her body, the roar of thunders lighting up the darkening sky. Yes, Hinata was in her home, surrounded by her element. She could feel everything around her, the water pouring from the sky, the moist in the air, the water on the floor, slowly sinking into the earth, linking up with underground streams. It was everywhere, all around her. She could even feel the water inside the people in the stands, in their blood. She had achieved the highest possible level of water manipulation, surpassing the legendary Senju Tobarama. In a not-so-distant future, she will become known as the Aim no Mikumari, water goddess, the first water elemental, and, by strike of fate or bad luck itself, she would also be the last one as well. 2. Elemental. A man or woman who had become one with her element. Naruto broke himself from his shock and simply gazed at Hinata. She looked so happy right now, so relaxed. She was completely soaked like him, the water was hitting her face and yet she had her eyes closed, like she enjoyed the contact of water with her skin. His eyes widened when he noticed that her chakra reserves were filling back up. She had spent around 1/3 of her reserves and now they were filling up by themselves. He could see it clearly with his Sharingan and it baffled him to no end. While strong and very smart, Hinata couldn't just pull chakra from water, simply because it had none to begin with. Normal water only had natural energy and that alone didn't make chakra. And suddenly it clicked, he remembered this jutsu. The rain stole chakra from the ones hit with it. That devious girl. Naruto chuckled to himself as he noticed the rate at which she was recharging. Naruto looked around and saw her stealing chakra from the Raikage and Jiraiya in Kage box, along with their bodyguards. They were small amounts and no one would ever notice unless she wanted it to. Do you think it was wise? Naruto said, breaking Hinata from her bliss as she slowly opened her eyes. Summoning such storm, I mean. I'm not known as the Konoha no Raijin, thunder god of Konoha, for nothing, Naruto warned, looking at the thunders, but Hinata just smiled and laughed softly. Her laugh sounded like a melody to his ears. Suddenly Hinata just stopped laughing and with that the whole storm seemed to freeze, the rain stopping and hovering midair. Naruto watched with interest, his Sharingan not missing a single detail. The water drops seemed to slowly being drawn towards Hinata and began spinning above her, forming something similar to a water sphere. More and more water was being drawn into whatever technique she was using, but the strange part was that Hinata didn't use hand seals for this one, her eyes were solely on Naruto. The size of the water sphere was ridiculous to say the least, it was big as the summons that had just left the arena. The sphere started elongating, taking the shape of a serpent-like creature. Naruto's eyes widened when he understood what was happening. Kirin Mizuchi, 3, both dragons blasted forward at blinding speeds. A huge, roaring lightning dragon came down from the sky, meeting the water serpent head-on. As the elemental dragons collided, everything went white in the arena. The whole building shook from the impact as both techniques clashed and struggled to overpower the other. The crowd could only hold to their seats and avoid gazing upon the arena, due to the brightness. The walls crumbled into dust in the ground, the wooden gates to the arena were vaporized and the earth was torn apart. Everyone in the stands held their breath and thanked whoever chose to rise a barrier in the arena. Naruto dug himself out of the ground, a silver ribcage around his body. He looked around, searching for Hinata, who seemed to be nowhere. He noticed a clotting chunk of water in the midst of the destruction they had created. The rain seemed to have stopped and the clouds started dissipating. Hinata's form rose from the water as she took a deep breath and looked towards Naruto. Both the previous jutsus were a one-shot only and it would take time to recharge. Hinata had spent all the water around her, she had literally bled the air dry, drawing all the water it had. Enough of elemental jutsu. The real battle has just begun, Naruto said as his eyes glowed and his Susanoo evolved into the next level, sprouting 2 arms, armed with 2 white ethereal sides. Perhaps not. Tobi's voice rang from the arena. Hinata's eyes widened when she heard a voice behind her, right next to her ear. She quickly turned around, only for her eyes to catch a glimpse of something metallic. She tilted her head as a blade grazed her neck, leaving a small blood trail. Tobi placed his hand on her shoulder and the space in front of him started swirling. As she was being warped away, she released chakra from all her chakra points, literally giving Toby a juken strike and interrupting his kamui. Before Hinata could take advantage of Toby's shock, she found herself on the opposite side of the arena. She looked confused and watched as Naruto pierced Toby's chest with a raikiri. What happened? Naruto-kun swapped places with me before I could even blink, and that wasn't his Hiroshin, Hinata thought to herself, confused. Her Byakugan was still at full blaze when she saw thousands of Zetsu pouring from the ground all around Kumo. He's launching an attack on Kumo, Hinata thought in disbelief until she saw him cough blood from Naruto's lightning strike. Naruto's blood-red eyes bore straight into the orange mask he came to hate and despise. Naruto looked around to see the Zetsu jumping from the ground and started a mayhem in Kumo. An invasion during the Jounin exams finals. Not very creative if you ask me, Naruto chuckled, his hand still in Toby's chest. Ahahaha, Toby laughed darkly, spitting blood to the ground. You can't defeat me with something like this, Toby said, looking down at Naruto's hand. Perhaps. But you aren't going anywhere, Naruto smirked, and Toby's eyes widened when he felt that he couldn't mold chakra. Naruto saw his panicked eyes and chuckled darkly. This was kinda of anticlimactic, wouldn't you say? Naruto rhetorically asked. Naruto brought his free hand and gently placed it on top of Toby's mask. Ever so slowly, he started removing it until he dropped it to the ground. The years have not been kind to you, Fugaku, Naruto said, and Fugaku snarled as he tried to jump away but found chains wrapped around his feet. Even you can't defeat an army of 10,000 Zetsu, Fugaku laughed in reply. We made many precautions to hide our plan. My army outweighs the shinobi in Kumo by 3. I do not fear an army of lions led by a sheep, Naruto replied as his sparkling hand died down. Naruto noticed that his chest wasn't the usual brownish color but was white instead. So that's how he can use the Mokuton, Naruto thought. Naruto looked back and watched as 2 Zetsu that were coming for Naruto were sniped by Hinata as she made her way towards him. I've decided on a far better fate for you than death, Naruto said and smiled darkly as he noticed a drop of sweat running down Fugaku's face. I'm going to make an example out of you, Naruto growled as he injected heavy amounts of natural energy on Fugaku's chakra network. Naruto could already see specks of gray stone forming on his skin. The man that wanted the world. I'm going to make a martyr out of you. The world will see you as the fool you were. Are you ready, Fugaku? Naruto asked. Oblivion awaits. Chapter 58, A Dragon's Wrath. I come not between the dragon and his wrath. King Lear Konoha Tsunade was buried in her paperwork, or how the Sandame would put it, the curse of the Kage. It was a deadly curse, I assure you of it, capable of bringing even the strongest of the shinobi to new heights of boredom and despair. The legends tell of many brave Kages that stood against this common enemy, and, even though armed with years of knowledge, the enemy still stands strong. This is ridiculous, Tsunade muttered beneath her breath as she stamped another worthless, yet surpassingly detailed drank report of the well-known catching Mr. Tora-chan mission. She looked up as the door opened and watched as Kakashi lazily strolled inside, hand in his pocket and nose buried in his books. Finally, Tsunade nearly screamed as Kakashi stopped in front of her desk. If looks could kill, Kakashi would already be dust by the angry gaze on Tsunade's face. I'm sorry I'm late. Kakashi actually looked embarrassed for a change. I met this pretty little snake in the forest and she wanted to .uhm.play.so we did. Kakashi chuckled nervously when he noticed Tsunade's eyes narrowing. This pretty little snake wouldn't be Anko by any chance, would it? Tsunade asked and was internally pleased when she saw Kakashi cough into his hand. Anyways, I need a favor from you. Kakashi noticed the business tone and immediately pocketed his precious book. Whatever you command, Hokage-sama, Kakashi said. Leave us, Tsunade said, waving her hand at seemingly nowhere. Kakashi, however, felt 3 chakra signatures vacate the room. She sent her umbu away. Whatever it is must be important, Kakashi mused in thought when he noticed Tsunade rest her head on her hands and release a long sigh. Cat is missing, Tsunade said, and Kakashi's eyes narrowed at the possible implications. By cat you mean Yugo? Kakashi asked, more a statement than a question. Yes, Tsunade replied nonetheless. She got up and turned back to the window, looking at the horizon. She hasn't come for her duties today. Her shift began almost 5 hours ago. If she was anyone else I would have dismissed it and proceeded to punch said umbu for endangering their Hokage. You want me to search for her? Kakashi asked. There are very few people I trust completely in this village. Yugo isn't just some random umbu, she's pretty high in the chain of command. Anyone else we would place him in the bingo book if he went missing all of a sudden. Tsunade sighed. She's part of that select group of people I trust, and she wouldn't simply skip a shift of her job without an explanation. I sent a Chunin to her house and she was nowhere to be found. So find her, Tsunade ordered. Hi Hokagesama, Kakashi answered as he disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Tsunade sat back down on her chair and leaned backwards, gazing into the ceiling. Neither Yugao nor Heiate were anywhere to be found, and both of them weren't some random shinobi. Tsunade was broken from her thoughts when she felt the ANBU return to the room and a knock at the door. Come in, Tsunade said as she adjusted her posture. Tea Tsunade-sama? Shizen asked, poking her head through the open door. I could use it. Maybe it will wash my stress and problems away, Tsunade replied and watched as Shizen placed a cup of steaming hot tea at her desk and promptly left the room. Tsunade absently picked up the cup and took a long sip, sighing in bliss as the hot tea ran down her throat. She was deep in her thoughts when she felt her heart starting to speed up with no apparent reason. Her breathing rate started increasing as well, and Tsunade immediately shot up from her chair. She stumbled momentarily as she felt lightheaded and her vision seemed blurry. She rose her arm, desperately reaching for anything to support her as she fell to the ground, knocking the cup of tea with her. She fell to her knees, taking deep breaths and trying to calm her beating heart. Poison? Tsunade thought in shock as she brought her shaking hand to her chest. Her hand started glowing green but was immediately brought to her mouth as she coughed up blood. Why aren't the ANBU doing anything? Tsunade looked up in despair until she heard the door opening slowly. As the door creaked ever so slowly, she looked up to see Danzo and, surprisingly, Shizen accompanying the old mummy. This is **treason. Tsunade gritted her teeth, her vision becoming blurrier and her breathing starting to waver. Good work, Danzo said, as he watched Tsunade collapse to the ground, drawing her last breath and blood trickling from her mouth. Shizen moments earlier, Kumo, the man that wanted the world. I'm going to make a martyr out of you, the world will see you as the fool you were. Are you ready, Fugaku? Naruto asked. Oblivion awaits Shinra Tensei. A loud voice broke Naruto from his actions as he tilted his head to the side to see some Akatsuki member with his right hand raised. Naruto vanished in a yellow flash, appearing on the other side of the arena next to Hinata. Fugaku received the blast wave head-on and went flying with Nagato's attack, but I suppose sore flesh is better than death. A single Zetsu immediately emerged from the ground and attached itself to Fugaku, patching up his body in a few seconds. Naruto watched with trembling anticipation as Akatsuki members seemed to pour from the sky. The 6 paths of Nagato followed by Konan and Kasame. What a happy reunion, Naruto said happily, clasping both hands and bringing them together to his chest in delight. We have come for you, Kyubi, a white-masked Akatsuki member said. Naruto narrowed his eyes as the white swirly mask opened to show Uzumaki Nagato. According to my intel, you were supposed to be physically impaired, but I suppose wearing a Zetsu body is a good replacement, Naruto said offhandedly. And you know very well why you are in that state. Those eyes do not belong to you, Naruto said, his Sharingan boring straight into Nagato. And I shall be taking them when I'm through with you, Naruto added in thought. It matters not. They are just a means to an end, Nagato said as he stepped forward, placing himself in the middle of his paths. Jiraiya, Blue, Tobirama, and Green, Hashirama, dropped from the Kage box and landed in the arena, or what was left of it after Naruto's match against Hinata. I am Guru Guru, Spiral Zetsu, Guru Guru yelled. Did you have a good bowel movement today? Guru Guru asked with fascination in his tone. What? Naruto sputtered. You got some balls coming for me, the Raikage shouted as his lightning armor roared to life. So it's true after all, Jiraiya sighed sadly. This isn't the path to peace you told me long ago. This world is nothing but a petty child, Nagato started. But even a foolish child can grow up in a right way, when he learns what pain is. Knowing pain controls one's thoughts and decisions enough, the Raikage shouted and his armor flared. Raiten Ingo Sudarito, lightning straight, a shot forward, cracking the ground as he ran towards Nagato with maximum speed. Nagato didn't seem to flinch as his pupils seemed to contract ever so slightly. Shinra Tensei Nagato said with disdain. I was repelled backwards with tremendous force, tumbling through the ground and crashing near Naruto and the others. Attacking head-on is foolish against a Rinnegan, Naruto warned, helping the Raikage up. Raikage-sama, Naruto said. What do you want, brat? Snapped. Leave them to us, go take care of your village, Naruto simply said, ignoring the looks of disbelief he got from A. You have your village to defend. Let us take care of them, Igakie said, snatching Naruto by his collar and bringing him up to his eye level. If they get away or take B, I'll have your head. Do you understand me? A snarled, but Naruto nodded nonetheless. A vanished with pure speed, leaving Naruto to deal the Akatsuki. I had his troops to rally and the village to defend. Sorry, B, Naruto said, and B looked at him with confusion. But I can't take any chances with you, Naruto said, and before B could say anything, he was warped into his Kamui dimension. Let's even the numbers a little bit, Naruto smirked. Summoning jutsu, Naruto said, and everyone tensed as he placed his hand on the ground. Naruto was unpredictable, and from a simple summoning jutsu could come the Kyuubi or nothing at all. Black, Mito, everyone's attention shifted to the small cloud of smoke. Once it dissipated, everyone cloud see the black dragon, pitch black armor and mask. Red hair tied into bun with a very large scroll attached to her lower back. Black is the color of authority and power. Red, Kushina, and another cloud of smoke. Waist-length blood red hair coupled with red armor and red mask. A single pitch black katana with red hilt hand on her back. The most emotionally intense color, red, stimulates a faster heartbeat and breathing. It is also the color of love. Yellow, Minato, this time it was a yellow flash instead of smoke. Yellow armor and mask, three-pronged kunai on each hand. Cheerful, optimistic sunny yellow is an attention-getter. Brown, Gaara, absolutely nothing. No cloud of smoke, no yellow flash. No nothing. Cough, I guess he's busy, Naruto muttered. Solid, reliable brown is the color of earth and is abundant in nature. Pink, now, the newest addition to the group. Light pink colored armor and mask, long raven hair and two twin swords strapped to her back in an X shape. Pink, the color that showed unconditional love but also being immature, silly and girlish. White, Itachi, the newest member along with Pink. He was clad in a pure white colored armor and mask. Jet black hair that was pulled back and tied with a red elastic in a low ponytail. White, the color that represented purity and perfection. So these are the fabled 10 dragons of the leaf. Or 9, I should say, Fugaku corrected. I suppose they can be imposing with the armor and masks, Fugaku said and narrowed his eyes, taking in the aura surrounding both white and pink. Traitors to your own family, Itachi, now Fugaku spat. We have two very distinct understandings of what family is. Father Itachi said, shattering his mask on the ground. Long time no see, Toby. Or maybe I should call you Fugaku. Yellow, Minato said, and you are? Fugaku asked, raising an eyebrow. Come now, Yellow, Minato said, an amused smile tugging his lips beneath his yellow mask. Minato's Sharingan blazed to life, glowing an ominous red behind his mask. An Uchiha. It's not possible, Fugaku thought, narrowing his eyes when he saw the red glow behind the black holes in the mask. Who are you? Fugaku asked carefully. He knew of no blonde Uchihas besides Naruto. Are you sure you don't remember me? Yellow, Minato snarled, deactivating the voice-changing seal ingrained in the mask. Minato chuckled when he noticed Fugaku's eyes widening in complete disbelief. Minato laughed, slowly bringing his hand to his yellow mask and, dropping it, he showed his real face to the world. He felt everyone looking at him in disbelief, shock, and to some degree, fear. You set my village in flames, you bring death to my people, you force my son into a life of hate, Minato spat with his Sharingan glowing. Today you shall bear witness to the full might of Namikaze. Minato, son of Uchiha Madara, Yandame Hokage of Konoha, Minato said, going through hand seals faster than some could even blink. Rat, ox, dog, horse, monkey, boar, tiger. Katan Goka Meshitsu, majestic fire destruction. Minato kneaded the chakra into his lungs and converted it into fire. He expelled a massive stream of intense flames, setting the area ablaze and engulfing half of the arena in a sea of flames. Nagato was the first to break from the shock of seeing Minato alive and well. Shinra Tensei he raised his hand and pushed back the incoming wave of flames. Nagato blinked as there was a yellow flash right in front of him. Nagato still had his hand raised as Minato appeared right in front of him, between Nagato and the wall of fire. Udama Rasengan, Giant Rasengan, Minato smashed his sphere of chakra against Nagato, who didn't even manage to use his Preta path to absorb the jutsu. Nagato was blasted backwards and chaos ensued. "I'll take Nagato, I have no wish to fight his puppets," Naruto said, and everyone charged forward to their enemy. Hinata can grab a sample of Konan's blood. "I know Black, Mito, would love her origami bloodline." Naruto smiled darkly and Hinata nodded. Nagato vs. Naruto. Every dragon charged forward, randomly picking an opponent and proceeded to dish the pain, either by iron, bone, or chakra. Naruto and Nagato were no different and, as such, were ducking it out between themselves. "Give yourself up, QB," Nagato said, raising his hand and releasing another repulsive wave. Naruto simply used his Kamui and dematerialized his body to avoid the attack. "I have no intention of hearing your explanations. You and your Akatsuki are responsible for all the bad shit that happened in this world," Naruto growled. "Tobi or Fugaku, whatever, I do not care." He released the Kyuubi in Konoha, he drove Kiri into a civil war, and he played Yagura like some puppet, butchering thousands of innocents. "You, in your holy quest for the Bijou, killed Yujito, attacked the fire temple in Takigakure, hidden waterfall village, nearly killing Fu in the process." Naruto spat, glaring at Nagato. "You won't get any words. The only thing you will get from me is vengeance," Naruto said just as his Sharingan started spinning into the Manjikyu. Amaterasu Nagato's body exploded with black flames, consuming the white shell of the Spiral Zetsu. "Arg!" Spiral Zetsu yelled as the black flames started consuming away his body. "Dosamething!" he yelled to his guest, his words slurring together due to the pain. Shinra Tensei, Nagato replied, pushing the flames away and dispersing them. Goruguru's body was singed all over with several black specks spread through his shell. Udama Rasengan. Nagato's eyes widened in shock as Naruto appeared in front of him. Nagato, momentarily distracted from Naruto's previous attack, was almost caught off guard. "Gakido, Preta path," Nagato said as a silvery barrier appeared around him and started absorbing Naruto's attack. However, Naruto's frontal assault with a powerful chakra technique was merely a distraction. Nagato sensed someone behind and quickly looked backwards and saw another Naruto speeding towards him, a black sword pointed straight at him. Just as the tip of the blade was about to connect with Nagato, a mechanical arm sprouted from his shoulder and caught the blade in his hands. Two more arms appeared from his body, these ones without a hand but what seemed to be a cannon at the edge. "Shura no Ko, a Jura attack," Nagato said, each arm aimed towards one Naruto. Both mechanical weapons started glowing and gathering chakra. Just as the arms were about to go off, both Narutos started glowing. "Bunshin Daibakoa, Shadow Clone Explosion," both clones said in perfect sync. They detonated themselves with a deafening bang. Once the smoke cleared, Nagato stood in the middle of the blast zone, arms crossed around his face. He looked around and quickly spotted the original Naruto, sitting safely in a nearby wall watching the fight, his hair waving due to the explosion and an amused expression etched into his face. Nagato was about to engage when himself staggered slightly. "My Tendo, Deva path, has fallen. So Tobirama is also alive, this is troubling," Nagato thought to himself and analyzed the situation. The Kyuubi brat was certainly strong, to force him to not only use two paths simultaneously but to also come out on top. Before he could think anymore, 5 more Narutos burst from the ground, forming a perfect circle around Nagato. Shinra Tensei, Nagato yelled, destroying all 5 clones at once. Nagato's eyes widened when he caught a glimpse of yellow out of the corner of his eye. Hirashinjiri, Thunder God Slash, Naruto's sword seemed to blur as Guru immediately shifted Nagato's body in his shell to avoid him losing his head. Shinra Tensei having regained his power again, he blasted Naruto backwards only for him to poof and smoke as well. Nagato felt something hot trickling down his face and noticed a small trail of blood running down his forehead. He hadn't escaped completely unharmed. He's using the intervals between my attacks. I'll have to be very careful. I cannot blindly use it any longer or I'll end up like my Tendo, Deva path, Nagato concluded in thought as he looked towards his arm and spotted a black marking. Hiraishin Seal Nagato thought in shock as he quickly absorbed the chakra inside and destroyed the marking. Yukojizi no Jutsu, Rainmaker Jutsu, Nagato muttered, raising both hands to the sky, forming dark clouds with his own chakra. It was mere moments later that heavy rain started pouring down around both fighters. I cannot rely solely on my vision to track him, Nagato thought as he connected with the rain. He turned to Naruto's location only to see him still sitting in the wall, looking at Nagato with curiosity. Naruto rose and jumped to the ground, arms crossed and standing face to face with Nagato for the first time since the battle began. Bancho Tenin Naruto rose from the ground and flew straight towards Nagato's awaiting arm. Mere inches away from contact, Naruto triggered his Kamui and simply phased through Nagato, appearing behind his back. Raikan, Lightning Fist, running electricity through his right arm and going into his fist, Naruto punched Nagato's back. It sounded like a thunderclap. Nagato gritted his teeth from the impact as his body was blasted forward. Nagato twirled midair and landed on the ground safely, a black spider-webbed pattern on his back, where Naruto had struck. Enten Goka Makyaku, Inferno-style Great Fire Annihilation, Naruto said, unleashing a wave of black flames. Nagato instinctually raised his hand but stopped before he used his gravity attacks. Instead, Nagato placed both hands on the ground and raised a vast wall of rock to block the incoming flames. He felt the powerful flames smash against his wall but had managed to hold against the initial impact. What's this? Nagato thought in confusion when he heard a small buzzing sounds coming from the other side of the wall. Futon, Raisin Shuriken. Nagato's eyes widened when the wall in front of him cracked open and everything was enveloped in a towering dome of spiraling wind chakra. Shinra Tensei. Nagato bellowed, blasting everything around him backwards. The earth was torn apart, sending chunks flying everywhere and dispelling Naruto's attack. Using the rain, Nagato searched for his opponent, his vision clouded by the debris of his latest attack. Nagato caught a small glint in the middle of the dust and immediately ducked. A golden chain buzzed through his ears, missing him by a few inches. Nagato rolled to the side as another chain shot from the smoke coverage. Futon Ripusho, Gale Palm. Nagato clapped his hands together and released a powerful gale. Not enough to be destructive, but good enough to push all the dust and smoke away, clearing his field of vision. Naruto stood in the middle of the battlefield, arms crossed, completely still and with several golden chains dancing ominously behind his back. Nagato summoned a mechanical arm and launched dozens of mini-rockets, whistling their way towards Naruto. Boom boom boom, rocket after rocket crashed on the ground near Naruto with loud explosions. Nagato stopped his attack and waited for the dust to settle, searching for any signs of Naruto. From the dust came 6 chains, heading straight towards Nagato, who began evasive maneuvers. Nagato jumped, ducked, and rolled as the chains chased after him. One chain smashed against the ground and dug itself. Nagato jumped on the chain and ran above it towards Naruto. Shinra Tensei. Nagato yelled outside of the dust cloud, releasing a shockwave at point-blank range. Nagato watched as the chains retracted against the will, the metal creaking as it bent against its will. The ground rippled and the dust cloud was disrupted, making Naruto appear from the inside. Nagato watched with as the repulsive wave washed over Naruto with no visible effect. Ninjendo, Human Path. Nagato tried to place his hand on Naruto's head, only to phase right through it and end up on the other side. Nagato caught Naruto's elbow on reply and flung Naruto into the air. Naruto disappeared mid-flight and appeared on the ground a few yards away. I have to find a way to neutralize his Kamui, Nagato mused in thought. The Sharingan is an amazing jujitsu, isn't it? Naruto rhetorically asked as a wild idea came to his mind. He crossed both arms behind his back and nodded to Nagato. Come, Naruto said with a smirk. Nagato's eyes twitched at Naruto's blunt disrespect for him. People rely too much on ninjutsu and genjutsu. Very few people appreciate the art of taijutsu and kenjutsu. It's one of the things I love about Hinataken. Both of us like getting all close and personal with the adversary. Naruto grinned as Nagato arrived near him. Naruto tilted backwards as Nagato threw a left jab and crouched when Nagato added a horizontal kick. Naruto grinned and pushed forward, ramming his head straight in Nagato's stomach. As Nagato momentarily stumbled, Naruto rose and performed a perfect roundhouse kick, sending Nagato spiraling and crashing into the ground. Nagato shook his head, getting rid of the dizziness that lingered. He looked up to see Naruto with his arms still behind his back and jumping lightly on the ground, alternating his feet with each jump, almost like skipping but without a rope. Nagato snarled and ran forward, arriving near Naruto and throwing a series of punches and kicks. Naruto's Sharingan glowed as it predicted every move, a small tilt backwards to avoid a punch, a sidestep to the right, a forward lean. Nagato went for a leg swipe, forcing Naruto to jump into the air. Naruto leaned his body backwards, placing himself horizontally in the air and sprang his legs forward, slamming both feet against Nagato's chest. Nagato went flying and Naruto fell to the ground with a simple thumb sound. Naruto rose his head slightly and watched Nagato rise to his feet, wiping a busted lip with his arm. Nagato got tired of being pushed around like some ragdoll and slammed both hands on the ground. Doton, Danban-kyu, bedrock coffin, multiple sections of rock rose around Naruto's lying form, trying to wrap themselves around his body and bury him permanently. Naruto grinned and raised both legs into the air. He brought them down quickly, transferring their momentum into his upper body, forcing himself to rise and land perfectly on both feet. Without missing a beat, Naruto jumped just in time for the rock slabs to slam where he previously was. Naruto dashed forward and jumped high into the air. Nagato tracked him in the sky and rose his arm as Naruto landed beside him. Shinra Tensei Nagato yelled, hoping to catch Naruto off guard and blast him away. He had no such luck as Naruto used his Kamui to simply avoid the attack. Naruto grinned and twirled around, trapping Nagato's extended arm with his chin to his chest. Naruto used Nagato's arm for leverage and swung his legs upwards, pinning Nagato's head between them. With a small flick of his body, Nagato was jerked violently into the ground, his head first and the rest of his body following shortly. Naruto disentangled himself from Nagato and jumped backwards to gain some distance. "Your taijutsu is sloppy," Naruto commented. All the physical exchanges had been with his arms crossed behind his back. "How about this?" Naruto said, stomping his feet into the ground and bringing both arms forward. "I won't move from this place," Naruto offered, closing his hands into fists and waiting for Nagato. Nagato rose from the ground and flexed his neck, satisfied by a few crack sounds. Nagato looked up and for the first time saw what an opponent Naruto truly was. He wasn't an ordinary strength shinobi that had a single deadly technique, like Deidara's bombs, Haiden's immortality, or Sasori's puppets. No, Naruto was a different kind of strength shinobi. The kind that didn't rely only on his bloodlines and powerful abilities. He was a shinobi that had all the traits of a shinobi mastered to their peak. His kenjutsu and bojutsu were deadly, his taijutsu flawless, his genjutsu perfect and his ninjutsu unmatched. He truly deserved the title of God of the shinobi. "It's useless," Naruto said, breaking Nagato from his inner musings. "You may have the Rinnegan and be a powerhouse, but all that power is meaningless against someone like me. You are too slow to face me," Naruto taunted, striking the ego of the so-called god. "Nothing will stand against me," Nagato replied, not even slightly angered by Naruto's words. "I may not be able to hit you, but this village will not be able to run," Nagato said as he started floating and shot into the sky. It took a mere second to reach the highest point in the village. Nagato looked down at the village and Naruto, feeling that they were in their right place, beneath him. Nagato's chakra spiked as he stretched his arms outwards, making the sky around him turn a piercing white. "He's too far away I won't make in time before he blows up the village." Naruto raked his brain for answers. He should have finished Nagato instead of playing around with him and seeing his mastery of over the Rinnegan. Naruto was about to unveil his Rinnegan to counter Nagato when another wild idea came to his mind. "Uchiha!" Naruto roared, slamming his right hand on the ground, each finger carrying small chakra flames. Kenjin, Uchiha Flame Formation. A pure red cylindrical barrier rose from the ground and circled around Nagato, placing him in the center. The barrier wasn't overly large, it stood a few feet away from Nagato, completely surrounding him. "Sho Shinra Tensei," Nagato whispered, releasing his attack at maximum power. The sky glowed a reddish-white, a combination of Nagato's attack and Naruto's barrier. The barrier creaked, almost like plastic, as it stretched around Nagato. The power of his attack forcing the barrier to expand like a balloon. Nagato poured more chakra into his technique, intending to destroy the barrier and level the village, including everyone in it. That fool thought he's going to kill himself, Kurama said. Nagato was pouring too much chakra into his technique and the barrier was stretching to its limits. The amount of energy inside the barrier was insane and it wouldn't matter who won in the end, Nagato or Naruto's barrier. The shockwave reverberated through the village, shaking it to its foundations but otherwise not damaging it. The barrier itself exploded like a balloon, with Nagato still inside. There was a large cloud of smoke high in the sky, where Nagato was. Naruto lifted his hand from the ground and looked up to the sky. He looked at his fingertips and watched as the skin sizzled to full health. He had poured too much chakra into the barrier without any type of preparation. Naruto saw something leaving the smoke cloud and plummeting to the ground in a free fall. Naruto narrowed his eyes and watched the form of Nagato falling down, his external Zetsu shell, a.k., a spiral Zetsu, a.k. A guru completely gone, most likely decimated in the explosion. Nagato grunted as he hit a building and finally came down, tumbling through the ground as he came to a halt near a rock. Nagato struggled to move, pushing himself up with only his arms. He looked over himself and noticed that the Zetsu shell for mobility was gone. No, Nagato gritted his teeth, willing his legs to move but only getting a small twitch. Even if his legs were to move, they would never serve his purpose, their muscle was weak and atrophied. Nagato struggled but managed to look up to see Naruto approaching. "It won't end like this," Nagato roared with a rage-filled voice, slamming both hands on the ground. Kuchios. Geto Mazo. Naruto stopped his progress when he heard Nagato's words. His eyes widened when he saw a humanoid hand burst from the ground and try to stomp him. It didn't take long for its decayed-looking body to come out of the ground as well. This is... Kurama's eyes widened when he saw the humanoid figure appear. The Geto Mazo rose from the ground with Nagato sitting on top of its head. "I will show you the power of God," Nagato said, having regained his breathing. The Geto Mazo kept still as Nagato started pouring his chakra into the statue, making a translucent purple dragon to form on his mouth. "Bring me into this," Naruto Kurama said from his den in Naruto's mindscape. "No, I don't want you getting sucked into the statue," Naruto replied, and Kurama reluctantly agreed. "Besides, he's killing himself. He's feeding the statue his own life force. He may be an Uzumaki but he still is human," Naruto replied. "I suppose it's time I showed the true power of my Sharingan," Naruto said to Nagato, who stood on top of the Geto Mazo statue. "The Rinnegan will my trump card should I ever need it," Naruto thought as his Sharingan started glowing. "There are some things that I keep secret from nearly everyone. Only Kurama and Hinata know everything about me," Naruto chuckled aimlessly. "You will be the first enemy to bear witness to the full might of my Sharingan. I'm going to show you why the rank title is meaningless against me," Naruto said as his chakra spiked and a silver aura surrounded his body. "Behold my perfect Susanoo," and with that his chakra seemed to roar and come to life. Naruto's body was immediately shrouded by a large cloud of bubbling silver chakra. Only his eyes remained visible, glowing that blood-red color that haunted so many shinobi. Naruto's aura shot to the sky and started taking humanoid form. The only thing Nagato could do was look up and pray he wouldn't end up beneath a foot of Naruto's Susanoo. Stabilizing, Naruto thought as his perfect Susanoo started taking shape. His Susanoo had translucent silver specter, almost looking demonic. Its form had long, shaggy white hair that reached its waist, with two massive white horns protruding from its head and two featherless wings from its back. Pitch black eyes with fangs instead of teeth and twin sides strapped around his back. In all honesty, it looked like a visage of the Shinigami itself, if it wasn't for the massive size it had. "Tell me, Nagato," Naruto said from inside the head of its Susanoo. Naruto looked like a small dot on his Susanoo's forehead. "Do you feel like a god dot or an ant?" Fugaku vs. Minato ready for round 2? Minato asked, bending his knees and reading his three-pronged kunai. He had hundreds stored away in his wrist seals, ready to use at any time. "You can't be him," Fugaku stressed, having difficulty believing the man in front of him could be the fourth Hokage. "I watched him die," Fugaku stressed his words. "Does it really matter?" "I'm here now, and this time nothing will save you from me," Minato said, twirling his kunai. Ahaha, Fugaku chuckled at Minato's empty words. "If I remember correctly, you died last time we fought, really?" Minato asked in curiosity. I remember shoving a Rasengan up your ass and sending you away with your arm melting, Minato taunted. So he really is him, Fugaku thought, hearing Minato's words about their last battle and found them to be true. Naruto was right about you, Minato said, breaking Fugaku from his thoughts. You could have applied all that power you have to the leaf, you could have brought the Uchiha clan into greatness. You could have had everything, a good life, a respectable position in the village as a clan leader, but that wasn't enough, was it? Minato asked, shaking his head in disappointment. The world is barely enough, Fugaku replied. I won't stop until the world belongs to me, Fugaku growled and was about to step forward when he noticed a shift in Minato's eyes. They were spinning, the tomos blurring together and forming a whole new pattern. A manjikyu? Fugaku asked in disbelief as he gazed into Minato's glowing eyes. I always hid away my heritage, Minato chuckled. Both as request from my father and by fear as well. Fear of being rejected in the village I grew to love so much. I never really trained my eyes and simply left them in the background. I only used my Susanoo once, and it was when I sparred with Kushinachen and she went berserk, Minato reminisced. But not anymore. Minato's tone suddenly became serious and his face hard as stone. It's time I embrace my heritage as an Uchiha and wielder of the Sharingan bloodline, Minato smirked when he noticed Fugaku gulp. Minato shot forward, cracking the ground and leaving a trail of dust behind. Fugaku watched as Minato approached him, his Sharingan seeing the enemy incoming, frame by frame, like a slow-motion movie. Minato was a few feet away and Fugaku's eyes started spinning. 10 feet. Fugaku's eyes were picking up speed, the tomos becoming nothing more than blurred lines in a sea of red. 5 feet. The black circle on his Sharingan started taking form, the form of 3 stretched triangles, evenly spaced around the pupil, making it similar to pinwheel. 2 inches. Kamu bang! Minato's fist collided with Fugaku's face as he was thrown backwards. Fugaku tumbled through the ground but quickly regained his footing. He got up and wiped a little bit of blood dripping from his lips. Fugaku brought his hands to his chin and with a sickening crack, he reset his jaw. You are faster than I remembered, Fugaku commented. It had been a mistake relying on his Sharingan since it took a small time frame to switch to the Manjikyu. I grew lax on my time as Hokage, Minato admitted without shame. The job will do that to you. Although fighting against my son really placed things in perspective. Fugaku raised an eyebrow. How so? He asked, curious. He's beyond any of us, Minato chuckled softly. Naruto was everything he ever wanted in a son and he turned out like that all on his own. Well, maybe Hinata did help with the mold. Mokuton Hijitsu, Fugaku said, clasping both together. Jukai Koten, deep forest creation, Fugaku finished as the ground started grumbling. Dozens of trees grew from the ground. Their branches seemed to obey Fugaku and immediately dashed towards Minato in great speeds. Minato's Sharingan glowed softly, his eyeballs moving wildly, tracking every single branch of the incoming wave of trees. Minato sidestepped a branch, avoiding it by a mere inch. Not by luck or chance, everything had been calculated. He's nowhere near Hashirama's level of skill with the Mokuton, Minato thought, looking at the forest replica in front of him. Hashirama was able to create a forest in the blink of an eye. Let me show you something that Naruto taught me, Minato said as he jumped backwards, avoiding another tree and landing on some branches. Katan, Minato began, stretching both arms forward, his hands inches apart. A small ball of chakra flared in between his hands. It was small at first, but quickly it started gaining size and turning dark orange in color. His right hand forming and shaping the spinning sphere of chakra, his left hand changing the chakra into fire type. Goen Rasengan, Great Flame Rasengan, Minato finished, unleashing his Rasengan upon the forest and flashing away to safety. Fugaku's eyes widened as he activated his Kamui and swirled away, just in time to avoid the maelstrom of raging fire. It looked like a tornado, burning through the forest, leaving nothing but ashes behind. Minato placed his hand in front of his face, shielding himself from the brightness and the blazing heat. Once the attack had calmed down, there were no surprises. The tree had been turned into charcoal, covering the floor in black dust. Minato dropped down to the ground, his feet raising a small cloud of the black charcoal as he landed. His Sharingan snapped to the left as he caught movement. Clang! Minato instantly raised his right arm, A three-pronged kunai made its way to his hand as he parried Fugaku. Minato tilted his body and went for a kick. Fugaku caught him by the ankle and sent a punch in retaliation, which Minato blocked, making them both hit a standstill. Kamui Fugaku thought, making the space in front of him swirl, intending to send Minato to his pocket dimension and leave them there until he perished. Fugaku watched with glowing relief as Minato was completely absorbed into his dimension. "You lose," Fugaku said to no one. "I told Arg," Fugaku screamed as Minato appeared out of nowhere right in front of him and punched him in the gut, followed by a kick to his head, sending Fugaku tumbling through the ground. Before Fugaku could understand what happened, Minato was already upon him once again with a Rasengan inches away from his chest. Rasengan Minato smashed his blue sphere only for it to phase right through. Fugaku had used his Kamui just in time. Both jumped backwards and Minato watched with anticipation for something to happen. Boom! Out of nowhere, Fugaku was blasted backwards, crashing into the ground with enough force to break the earth. "That bastard!" The Minato I absorbed was a clone. Fugaku snarled and fought as he coughed up blood. He looked up to see Minato watching him calmly, so calmly that it let a sinking feeling in Fugaku's stomach. "Your trick was a one-time shot. I won't fall for that again." Fugaku ripped out of shirt, completely ruined to Minato's Rasengan. Minato watched as Fugaku's shirt dropped to the ground to reveal a pure white chest, almost completely made out of Zetsu. "How far would you go for power?" Minato asked in disgust. "The body of the Senju and the eyes of the Uchiha do make a rather nifty combination," Fugaku said, his hands blurring through hand seals. "Katan Genkyu, Great Blaze Ball." Fugaku exhaled a meteor-sized sphere of fire, completely blocking Fugaku from view. "I don't have any seal out of reach of that attack," Minato thought as he saw the gigantic sphere of fire approaching. "I guess it would come out eventually." Minato smirked to himself as his body was enveloped by a yellow flare. Boom! The fire sphere collided with Minato and exploded in a shower of fire. Fugaku watched with satisfaction as Minato's form was enveloped in flames so hot that rivaled Minato's last fire Rasengan. "What the?" Fugaku said in complete disbelief when he saw Minato's form simply walking of the debris, right through the ring of flames like he felt nothing. Minato's body was completely yellow and that wasn't his armor. It was like his body had some type of yellow cloak, chakra flames covering his form. It seemed he had some ethereal yellow armor around him, but skin tight. "You like?" Minato asked as two ethereal kunai formed, one in each hand. "This is my version of perfect Susanoo. A skin-tight armor that sacrifices all offensive abilities for the ultimate defense. I doubt even a Bijudama could crack my version of the Susanoo." Minato smirked at the panicking face of Fugaku. "How?" Fugaku simply asked. "Naruto knows more about the Sharingan that you could ever hope to," Minato said as he readied himself to end this battle for good. He was about to jump forward when both of them felt the village rumble. They looked up and saw a big figure appear. "He summoned the Geto Mazo," Fugaku said, shocked. "Is Naruto really pushing him that far?" Fugaku thought in disbelief. He was completely surprised when another figure appeared in front of the statue. Fugaku's eyes widened when he spotted the perfect Susanoo of Naruto. It was massive to say the least, it even dwarfed the Geto Mazo, and that was saying something. "Don't you see it?" "You can't win," Minato said as he bent his knees and prepared for his final jutsu. His Susanoo may be nearly indestructible, but it ate a lot of chakra, and he didn't have a chakra supply like Naruto. "Are you ready, Fugaku?" Minato asked, breaking Fugaku from his shock. Fugaku didn't know what came over him, but for the very first time in his life, he felt fear. It hit like a ton of bricks that he couldn't win, he would never be able to win. Everything he ever done was pointless against someone like Naruto. "The third and last level of my Hiraishin," Minato said, and Fugaku could only watch as the ground around him lit up like a Christmas tree. Dozens, if not hundreds of Hiraishin seals riddled the grounds, the dislodged rocks, the walls. Everywhere. "Hiraishin no Mai, Dance of the Flying Thunder God," and with 3 simple words, Minato began his onslaught. Fugaku immediately triggered his Kamui and could only look in despair as dozens of Minatos appeared in around him. Fugaku took a step back to avoid getting slashed by a kunai. He tilted his head only to see another Minato coming for him. He used his Kamui to dodge and nearly screamed in fright when another Minato appeared in front of him. And that was when it hit him. Minato was using his Hiraishin at such great speeds that even Fugaku's Sharingan couldn't track him. He was moving so fast that it seemed they were multiple Minatos coming at him from all directions when in fact it was only one. 10 seconds. Fugaku gulped when he felt his Kamui ability stretching thin, but he couldn't do anything. He couldn't even make hand seals because he needed his fingers to become tangible, and he knew Minato would slice them off in the blink of an eye. 0 seconds. Minato noticed the slight shift in Fugaku's chakra network and took immediate action. The first move would be crippling him. Minato flashed near Fugaku, who didn't even seem to flinch in acknowledgement. Minato slashed with his kunai, beginning in his left eye, crossing the bridge of his nose and ending of Fugaku's right eye. RGHH! Fugaku screamed as he dropped to the ground. He clutched to his face, blood dripping freely into the ground and his eyes completely destroyed. Fugaku didn't get to scream much more as Minato flashed in front of him and finished him with a point-blank Rasengan to his chest. Fugaku's body ripped through the ground as the blue sphere drilled into his chest, nearly tearing his body apart the instant it hit him. Minato lost track of Fugaku as he dropped to his knees, his Susanoo vanishing and taking deep breaths. His chakra stores were empty, his Susanoo coupled with the final level of the Hiraishin for so long had taken its toll. Minato had done his part in this battle and he proceeded to flash to safety, to rest his body. Konan vs. Hinata. Do you know what you are doing? Hinata asked. I have received the will of God and I must kill you. Any last words, little girl? Konan asked in her traditional neutral and cold voice. Bring it, Hinata replied. Shikigami no Mai, Konan said, her body and clothing turning into small sheets of paper, the size of exploding tags. 2 white wings materialized behind her back, made completely of said paper. Konan flapped her wings, raising in the air and diving towards Hinata. Just as Konan was about to make contact, Hinata triggered her water body technique and dropped into a puddle of water, letting Konan fly by harmlessly. The water quickly moved its position, making Hinata reappear on the other side of the battlefield. Konan waved her arm towards Hinata, making hundreds of exploding tags burst from her arm and fly towards her. Hinata used her Byakugan and noticed that the tags were coming from all directions, circling around her and preparing to detonate. Shugohaku Rokujuyan Sho, Protective 8 trigrams 64 palms, a similar version to the Kaiten technique but far more effective against Konan's attack. Hinata's hands glowed a soft blue. To the naked eye it would be just that, but to anyone with a Dijitsu or enough talent in sensing, they would be able to notice extremely thin, sharp chakra blades protruding from each of her fingers. Hinata waved her arm downwards, slicing dozens of bombs tags and turning them into worthless pieces of paper on the ground. Hinata's arms were picking up speed, looking almost like blurs and forming some sort of barricade around her, similar to the Kaiten, but with chakra blades that sliced anything that came even near it. As time got by, the tags started decreasing in number by the dozens, and in just a couple of seconds they were nearly reduced to dust on the ground. TSK Konan huffed in annoyance. Her attack should have been enough to finish her, but apparently Hinata's reputation as an S-rank shinobi was well earned. Konan blinked as Hinata was suddenly at her face in a burst of speed. Konan quickly found herself on the defensive against Hinata's vicious strikes with both power and speed. Hinata went for a palm thrust into Konan's chest only for Konan to burst into hundreds of papers. The papers swirled around Hinata as they flew off and slowly started clotting together, giving Konan's form back. Konan blinked as she stumbled backwards, barely avoiding an Arasenban. The needles were so small and were thrown with such remarkable speed and precision that she nearly got hit. Sutenkyaku, heaven kick of pain, Hinata came down from the sky, her heel hitting against Konan's back and smashing her into the ground in a large explosion. Hinata watched as Konan's form wavered as she fell apart into sheets of paper. Her Byakugan caught a blur and Hinata jumped away, avoiding several paper chakrams. Hinata twirled around and blasted forward. Konan's eyes widened as Hinata closed the distance in the blink of an eye and all she could do was bring her arms up to shield herself. Smash Konan was blasted backwards, crashing through the ground until finally coming to halt. Hinata took a sunban and took a small blood sample from the ground where Konan had been it. She quickly sealed the sunban back in her wrist seals and waited for Konan to get up. Konan dug her way out of the rubble and spat blood to the ground. She had enough with the Hyuga girl. She was going to end her no and go to help Nagato against with Kyuubi Brat. Konan was about to unleash her ultimate technique when she felt a change in Hinata. "Your aura has changed," Konan commented with curiosity.
"It's called Senjutsu," Hinata began. Her purple markings around her face seemed to glow with energy. "By absorbing natural energy and finding the proper mix with the physical and spiritual energy that make chakra, I can create a new mixture called Senjutsu chakra. You would need to feel it to truly understand it," Hinata said softly, with clear passion in her voice.
"The things Senjutsu chakra allows. It's truly amazing and scary sometimes.
Naruto only uses Senjutsu to boost his own power to levels that can defy logic, but I am more subtle about it.
To me, Senjutsu isn't only about power.
The medical's applications of Senjutsu are limitless. I can forcefully inject it into a chakra system and completely petrify a person, or I can use it to push to my body to levels never before reached," Hinata said seriously. "I can regenerate vital organs instantly, regrow limbs in a matter of seconds, push my body to the ultimate level by opening the 8 inner gates and live to tell the tale." Hinata laughed softly, raising her hand into the air, the purple marks spreading around her arm like a snake. "The power of the world, in the back of my hand. As long as I have chakra, I don't fall in battle," Hinata said as her Byakugan flared to life once again. The world around her lighting up like a fire, her eyes able to see the natural energy around her. Running through the ground like endless rivers, flying in the wind like flocks, running deep in her veins like blood.
"The possibilities with Senjutsu are endless, and I've just began to truly understand how chakra really works," Hinata said, ever so slowly lowering her right.
"Like this," Hinata said and slowly tilted her head. Konan's eyes widened when her hair seemed to increase to impossible lengths, and before she could think of a proper response, Hinata's hair wrapped itself around Konan, pinning her wings to her back. Without a hand seal or anything else, Hinata's hair started rotating midair until it whiplashed Konan to the ground at neck-breaking speeds. Konan flexed her paper wings to break the fall, but even that wasn't enough to stop her momentum as she crashed into the ground, making a crater from the impact.
Konan gritted her teeth, momentarily losing control of her origami bloodline and her body returning to normal.
Konan's hand was holding her shoulder. As if she let go, her shoulder would drop to the ground. With a sickening crunch, Konan pushed her shoulder backwards, placing it in the right place.
"You won't stop Nagato's vision," Konan said with vigor as she raised her arms to the sky.
This time it wasn't hundreds, but thousands of exploding tags coming out of her arms. Her breathing started to get heavier as her chakra levels started to drop lower and lower, her ultimate technique taking too much out of her.
"Kami no Shisha no Jutsu, paper ocean technique," Konan said as the thousands of paper tags seemed to swarm Hinata and start to spiral around her body. "Even if you transform into water, you won't get out of this alive. I've prepared this technique should Toby ever step out of line." "Any last words?" Konan asked. "Yes," Hinata said, locking eyes with Konan, her Byakugan blazing.
"You followed the wrong god." Senpuseka no Mi, Sage Art's petrifying eyes, Hinata said as her Byakugan seemed to give off a silver pulse.
Konan suddenly drew a harsh breath as foreign chakra flooded her system and started overwhelming her.
Hinata was about to finish her technique and petrify Konan forever when both Kunoichi felt the village tremble.
Hinata stumbled and dropped her eye contact, making Konan fall to the ground, coughing and taking a series of quick breaths. Nagato! Konan yelled at the blinding light on the horizon, where she knew Nagato was fighting against the Kyuubi kid.
Konan jumped into the air, pouring the remnants of her chakra into forming her paper wings.
Konan quickly flew off with Hinata running after her. Kisame vs.
White, Itachi, we meet again. Itachi and Kisame replied, grinning like a madman.
It appeared he would get the battle he always wanted.
So it seems, Itachi replied.
People say I'm a shark, Kisame said, shrugging his shoulders.
And sharks have to eat, Kisame finished, picking up his blade that seemed to shiver with excitement.
Looks like Samahata has taken a liking to your chakra.
Maybe it was all that time we worked together. Suetan Amasukaha, rainwater shark wave, Kisame said, flashing through hand seals and slamming his hand on a nearby pond.
The water rose into the air and formed several large water sharks. Itachi didn't move from his place and simply took out 5 kunais with exploding tags attached. With a single hand, he threw all the 5 kunais at each shark's mouth with deadly accuracy. 5 explosions was the sound of Kisame's technique being defeated. Kisame just smirked when he noticed the explosion.
All that water in the air simply reformed into more sharks, although these ones were smaller they were far more numerous.
Kisame jumped into the air and brought his Samahata downwards, trying to smash Itachi. Just as the sword was about to make contact, Itachi exploded into crows that circled Kisame and reformed not far away. Kisame grinned and swung his Samahata backwards, hoping to catch Itachi off guard. A single kunai flew into Itachi's hand and, with dexterity he simply blocked Kisame's swing. Itachi was flung backwards due to Kisame's raw strength but landed safely on the ground. Both dashed forward again and met in a flurry of punches. Itachi threw a kick only for Kisame to bring his sword to the front and block it with ease. Minutes later, both Kisame and Itachi found themselves struggling against each other, Samahata clashing against a simple kunai in a battle of strength. Itachi's eyes widened and he jumped backwards when Samahata seemed to become alive and ripped through the bandages that hid its real form. "I told you, Samahata isn't a simple sword." Kisame grinned as he began hand seals. "Suetun Suikoden no Jutsu, Water Shark Bomb," Kisame said, thrusting his hand forward, hurtling a big water-made chakra at Itachi at high speeds. "Katan Gokakyu no Jutsu, Great Fireball Technique." Itachi jumped backwards to gain some room as he took a deep breath. He released a powerful ball of fire that crashed against the incoming shark. Both technique neutralizing each other in a cloud of steam. Kisame took Samahata by the handle and scanned his surroundings for Itachi, the steam clouding his vision. "You lose." Kisame's head twitched ever so slightly as Itachi seemed to shimmer behind him and place a simple kunai at his neck. "You really are a prodigy of the Sharingan." Kisame laughed, not at all intimidated by the kunai at his neck. "But I think you underestimated me." Kisame grinned, bursting into water as another Kisame appeared behind Itachi, this time placing Samahata at Itachi's neck. Kisame felt a small spike on Itachi's chakra and almost bubbled with excitement. "So you are going to use those eyes?" Kisame asked, not needing to see the Manjikyu on Itachi's eyes. "I already was." Kisame's head did a 180 and saw another Itachi looking at Kisame with a neutral face. The Itachi at Kisame's mercy only shimmered out of existence, no water, no smoke, no crows, like it was never there to begin with. "Impressive," Kisame said, lowering his blade and looking at Itachi carefully. "You got some new eyes, I see." "A gift," Itachi simply replied. "How about we end this right now?" Kisame asked. "Our most powerful jutsu against each other," Kisame offered and Itachi simply nodded. Itachi's eyes began glowing as Kisame began working through a long chain of hand seals. "Suetun Daikoden no Jutsu, Super Water Shark Bomb," Kisame shouted, thrusting both hands forward as a gigantic shark barreled towards Itachi, its massive jaws opened and ready to swallow anything on its way. Itachi was enveloped by an orange glow, signifying the use of his Susanoo shield. In just a few seconds, Itachi was completely surrounded by his fully formed Susanoo, complete with a sword on its right hand and a shield on its left hand. "Yada no Kagami," Itachi simply said, putting his red shield forward. The Yada mirror, an ethereal red shield that was rumored to be endowed with all 5 nature transformations, capable of negating any type of opposition, whether it's spiritual or physical. The rumor was about to be put to the test as the massive water shark approached. The shield lived to its expectations as it didn't even buckle when the water shark crashed upon it. Taking use of Kisame's shocked face upon seeing his strongest ninjutsu attack negated like it was some little pawn trick, Itachi took his sword of Tatsuka and thrust forward, piercing through Kisame's chest. Kisame didn't scream out in pain or anything, perhaps he was still shocked, or maybe he just didn't feel anything. "Itachi, it seems that in the end even a shark gets eaten," Kisame said as his form started to crumble and he was absorbed into the sword, sealed for all eternity. Blue, Tobarama, vs. Devapath. "Why do you follow the Kyuubi brat?" the Devapath asked in his monotone voice. "Because I believe in his ideals. He and we are both realists. We see the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be." Blue, Tobarama, said. "And he, unlike my older brother, doesn't think this world will know peace with friendly talks and by playing nice. He will reach peace, one way or another." Blue finished. "I see," the Devapath replied, narrowing his eyes. "Who are you?" he asked with simple curiosity, no real need to know. "My name matters not."
I'm the man that will support Naruto to the best of his abilities, and if that includes killing you. Then so be it. Blue, Tobirama said, clasping his hands together in a prayer sign. Suetun Bakus Rishua, great exploding water wave, Blue, Tobirama said as spiraling vortex of water appeared in front of him. The vortex exploded from the top, coming down against the Deva Path in the form of a gigantic wave. Shinra Tensei Deva Path raised his hand, pushing the wave backwards. The remaining water circled around the repulsive barrier. If Nao's information is correct, he should have a small interval between attacks. Blue, Tobirama thought as he watched the water calm down and the Deva Path lowering his arm. Blue flexed his right wrist, making a pop sound followed by a small cloud of smoke. Blue took the handle of whatever came out of the storage seals and channeled chakra through it. The handle seemed to roar to life, forming a blade of sparkling yellow light. It's the first time I've ever laid eyes on the Raijin no Ken, sort of the thunder god. If I remember correctly, it belonged to the Nidaime Hokage of the Leaf, Senju Tobirama the Deva Path said, not the slightest impressed by the legendary sword.
Not belonged. Blue, Tobirama said, bringing his hand to his blue mask.
Belongs. Blue said, dropping the mask to the floor and showing his face with 3 red markings and shaggy white hair. Senju Tobirama the Deva Path simply said, taking in the man in front of him. I supposed I shouldn't be surprised by your appearance, seeing that the fourth is also alive. And while the Deva Path stated,
Suetun Suadanya, severing wave, Tobirama spewed a highly compressed jet of water.
The jet ripped through the ground like a knife through hot butter as it approached the Deva Path.
Shinra Tensei the Deva Path shouted.
The water jet collided with the shield, splashing like water on hard floor.
Tobirama immediately dropped his attack and threw a few kunais. My power isn't ready yet, the Deva Path thought, tilting his head to the side and allowing the kunais to fly by harmlessly. Hirashinjiri, flying thunder god / the Deva Path heard a voice behind and quickly turned around, only to catch a small glimmer of yellow as the Raijin no Ken detached his head from his shoulders. Thump! The Deva Path's head rolled to the floor as Tobirama turned off his sword. Some god, Tobirama muttered as he walked away to help Kumo deal with the invading force of Zetsus. Red, Kushina, vs. Preta Path. Another one, the Preta Path said, his Rinnegan boring straight into the red dragon. You have Uzumaki chakra, the Preta Path commented with slight curiosity. I'm related to Uzumaki Mito after all, Red replied, shrugging her shoulders. I have red hair like the real you. My Uzumaki genes are dominant, but does it matter? Don't expect mercy on my hand just because we belong to the same clan. You want my Kushina stopped mid-sentence as she was about to reveal her identity. Forget it, Red said, unsheathing her sword from her back. Futon no Yoroi, Red said, her body gaining a small blue aura around her, almost invisible to the naked eye but like a light bulb to the Rinnegan. Issen, chakra wave, Red flicked her sword, releasing a blue crescent wave of chakra towards the Preta Path, who held his ground. The Preta Path allowed the jutsu to hit him head-on, only for the technique to disappear upon contact. He completely absorbed my attack. He must be the Preta Path, Red concluded in thought, deciding to resort to more physically oriented attacks. It was lucky that she was a more physically oriented fighter. Even with her slender frame she still packed quite a punch. Red took a deep breath and allowed her body to relax. Her aura began shutting down as she dropped her wind armor. No use in wasting chakra when the enemy could simply absorb it into his own reserves. Red buckled her knees and shot forward, leaving a trail of dust. Red swung her sword, the blade whistling as it cut through the air with ease. The Preta Path instinctually ducked and jumped backwards to gain distance from his opponent. He himself wasn't an offensive path but more of defensive one, and against a fast and powerful opponent like the Red Dragon, the Preta Path found himself troubled. The Preta Path quickly found himself on the defensive against Red's unrelenting attacks and vicious strikes. Red narrowed her eyes when she saw a black metal rod appear from the Preta Path's hands and parry her sword. Both weapons clashed with a resound bang, orange sparks flying as both metals grinded against each other in a battle for supremacy. Red took a single hand from her sword and pointed it straight at her opponent. The Preta Path noticed a small glint in her palm. His eyes widened and he immediately pushed himself backwards as a golden chain sprouted from her hand, grazing his cheek and drawing a small line of blood. Chains as well. Is she related to the Kyuubi brat as well?
The Predapath mused in thought, struggling to dodge the incoming chains that seemed to increase in number as time went on. The Predapath couldn't do much against such opponent, and in desperate times, come desperate moves. The Predapath rushed forward, dodging a few incoming chains as he made his way to Red, who was stationary while using her chains. The Predapath spread his arms, making black rods sprout from each hand. Red raised an eyebrow as the Predapath jumped into the air and flexed both rods at her, hoping to end her quickly. Red tilted her head in confusion as two chains shot from near her feet and wrapped themselves around the rods, snapping them like rotten wooden twigs. Red swung around and smashed her foot into his chest, sending the Predapath sailing through the air and landing harshly on the ground. The Predapath looked up and quickly rolled on the ground to avoid a volley of shurikens. Chain style, Red said, placing both hands on the ground and looking up towards the Predapath. Chain forest, Red said as the ground started to rumble ever so slightly. Hundreds of chains burst from the ground near her hands as they made their way against the Predapath. The chains seemed like snakes, slithering their way to their target. The Predapath could only look in horror at the incoming amount of chains. He knew that it was the end for him. He could never dodge that amount of chains, not matter how hard he tried, so he simply accepted his fate. The chains wrapped themselves around his arms and legs, ripping him apart in a matter of seconds. Green, Hashirama, vs. Animal Path Kuchios no Jutsu, Summoning Jutsu. The Animal Path wasted no time in talking to the Green Dragon. There was big cloud of smoke as the ground started quaking. A giant rhino burst from the smoke, stomping his way towards the Green Dragon, who was already going through hand seals.
Mokuton, Hote no Jutsu, Laughing Buddha Jutsu, gigantic wooden hands erupted upwards from the ground.
These hands quickly wrapped themselves around the incoming rhino, halting his progress and pinning him to the ground. The Animal Path slammed both hands on the ground, bringing forth more summons. This time a loud shrill filled the air as the summon shot from the smoke and high into the sky. Green was momentarily distracted with the bird summon that he didn't notice the ground beneath his feet start to crack. A giant centipede burst from the ground, sending Green flying through the air, but he landed gracefully a few feet away. Looking at the rhino, Green forced his wood ninjutsu upon his enemy, making the wooden hands clench around the animal.
The rhino groaned in pain until he burst into smoke. The bird gave another shrill as he looked down and plummeted towards Green. He jumped backwards as the bird crashed into the ground, the bird's beak drilling into the earth. Green was still midair when he felt the earth rumble. He looked backwards to see the large centipede burst from the ground and open its mouth. The centipede gobbled Green in the blink of an eye and closed its massive jaw. Mokuton, from the centipede's mouth came the muffled voice of Green as several spikes of wood emerged from the ground. These spikes impaled the centipede in multiple places, raising him into the air like some piece of meat on a stick. The summon burst into smoke, letting Green land safely on the ground. Green looked towards the Animal Path, who was on top of the bird's head, out of Green's reach for now. Kuchios no Jutsu, Summoning Jutsu, the Animal Path muttered.
Another cloud of smoke, followed by a large, brown-colored dog with a chakra receiver stuck through its head. Roar the dog bared his fangs and charged forward, the ground shaking with each step he took. Green held his ground, his hands blurring through hand seals faster than the average eye could follow.
Mokuton, Mokoria no Jutsu, Wood Dragon, a big wooden dragon with glowing yellow eyes burst from the ground.
The wooden dragon coiled like a snake before springing forward at high speeds. The dragon sneaked through the incoming dog's body, wrapping itself around his legs and bringing him to the ground. The dog howled in pain, his snout meeting the hard ground when his legs were tied together. To Green's surprise, the dog didn't disappear in smoke with that crash. No, in fact the dog somehow split into two and rushed forward once again. Green didn't stop to ponder what happened and sent two more dragons forward, one for each dog, and the same thing repeated itself. The dog crashed into the ground and proceeded to split and slip through the dragon's grasp. It seems that I can't defeat that summon, Green mused in thought as four dogs charged at him.
Mokuton, Shichiro no Jutsu, four-pillar prison, Green said.
The ground grumbled, and this time not caused by the approaching summons. Green took his time, letting the dogs approach him until they reached the intended spot. Several timber pillars shot from the ground, forming a perfect square around the dogs. The dogs whined as they crashed into the wooden walls and proceeded to split once again. Although this time they would not be going anywhere as they were confined inside the wooden prison. Time to end this, Green thought as he looked at the sky, watching the impassive face of the animal path. Mokuton Hijitsu Jukai Koten, deep forest emergence, dozens of trees rose from the ground, and this time they didn't stop at that. The trees continued growing into almost impossible heights as they went after the bird in the sky. The animal path's eyes widened when he saw the gigantic trees approaching and immediately began evasive maneuvers. Excellent, Green thought as he watched the animal path getting distracted with the trees. Green clasped both hands together and waited patiently as several red markings spread across his forehead and cheekbones. Senpu, Myojinman, Gate of the Great God, 2 massive red torii fell from the sky. The animal path was busy dodging the trees and didn't realize the danger coming from the above. Each torii landed on one of the bird's wings, bringing him to ground level with a loud crash. The animal path jumped as the bird crashed into the ground and disappeared in smoke. He was about to summon more when the wooden trees wrapped themselves around his form. "It's over," Green said, dropping down from the trees and landing in front of the animal path. "Nothing will stop me," the animal path said before Green removed as the chakra receivers, making the body fall to the ground dead. He was already dead, but this time he wouldn't be a puppet anymore. Pink, now, versus. Azura Path now dropped her mask onto the ground. It was no use hiding her face and identity when Fugaku had just told the world who was hidden beneath it. The old hag won't be happy about this now, grinned to herself at the thought of the old Senju hag rambling. "Traitor to your own family," the Azura Path said, several mechanical contraptions bursting from his body. Fugaku was the traitor now, spat back, not appreciating being called traitor. "He killed my sister just because she didn't follow his orders blindly like the rest of my pathetic clan," now gritted his teeth. She hoped that Minato was giving Fugaku what he deserved. "We were great, you know?" Once. But Fugaku drove us into this quest for power, and in the end, he ruined us. "It's interesting how a single person can influence the world," now sighed sadly before looking up and looking at the Azura Path, knowing that Nagato was listening behind this puppet. "And he will do the same thing to all of you," now warned. "He cares only for himself. He doesn't share your goals, Nagato. You want peace. The only thing he wants is control over everything, and he will kill anyone that tries to oppose him." "I think you are mistaken about me now," the Azura Path said, a slow chuckle escaping his lips. "Even I know there are no loyalties in the Akatsuki. Everyone is in there for themselves. Some for art, some for money, power, others just for fun of it, but in the end, they all did what I ordered," the Azura Path replied as his weapons readied themselves. "Just like you," the Azura Path pointed out, emphasizing each word as his head seemed to open to reveal to a cannon. He started gathering energy just before unleashing a powerful chakra blast. Now dropped her head, her eyes finding the floor. "I know now," said softly, ignoring the incoming missile of chakra. "I have my fair share of sins to atone for. And I think this is a good beginning," now said, taking both swords from her back. Now raised her head, her eyes bearing a look of fierce determination. She extended both arms forward and sliced the incoming chakra ball with ease, making it explode right in front of her. She raised a single arm to her face, shielding her eyes from the heat of the blast. Her Sharingan caught movement through the cloud of smoke and she immediately jumped backwards. The ground where she stood exploded when a small missile landed on the ground. Now looked up to see several more missiles heading towards her. She turned around and started running from them. She looked backwards to see that the number of missiles had diminished, but the remaining ones seemed to be tracking her. Now placed a single sword in her back and used her free hand to take out several shurikens. With precision only the Uchiha clan was known for, the shurikens hit the missiles, destroying them right in midair. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu, Great Fireball Technique, now took a deep breath and released a powerful fireball that burned its way towards Azura Path. He remained in place as the blast of fire crashed upon him. Now narrowed her eyes when she noticed that the Azura Path took the jutsu head-on but seemed unharmed. As the smoke cleared, the Azura Path stood unharmed. His traditional Akatsuki cloak was ruined, leaving him bare-skinned from the waist up. Instead of the traditional pink color of skin, Azura's chest was nearly all silver in color, with several metallic plates. TSK now thought when she noticed that her fire attack did nothing but to melt his clothes. She would need more heavy powerful attacks if she wanted to break through the shell of his Genjutsu was out, Taijutsu was well since she didn't have enough raw strength to break that kind of metal. Ninjutsu, it is now thought with a grin, her Sharingan slowly spinning and her black tomos blurring together to give birth to her eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. She shivered when she felt the usual rush of chakra into her eyes.
Only shinobi with Jujutsu could ever relate.
It was like scratching that itch that wasn't really painful, but it was enough to be uncomfortable.
Perhaps she was just liked to using the Sharingan, or maybe it was the enhanced vision that came with it. She took a deep breath and pushed those thoughts away. She was in the middle of a battle and even the slightest of distractions could prove deadly. She slowly rose her eyelids, the world around her lighting up. She blinked slowly as she watched dozens of incoming missiles, courtesy of the Azura path. Now stood her ground, watching the incoming missiles approach ever so slowly, 1 inch at a time. Her eyes started releasing a soft reddish glow as a purple aura manifested around her body. She took her last sword and cautiously placed her in her back, as if with a too hard of a movement they would break. The swords were the last remaining links she had to her sister along with her eyes. It barely took a second for her Susanoo to roar to life, shielding her body from the incoming threat. Now watched as the first missile hit her Susanoo shield and simply squashed itself like a mosquito in a window. The same fate happened with the following missiles. They didn't even scratch the surface of her ethereal shield. Now Susanoo grew in size, manifesting itself to its full height. A single, vibrant red-colored sword appeared in her right hand. Now flexed her own hand and the Susanoo gripped the sword tighter. Now cocked her arm backwards and pushed her sword forward at blinding speeds. The Azura path dodged to the side and replied with several chakra blasts that crashed upon her Susanoo. While powerful in his own right, the Azura path didn't have the weapons necessary to break through Nao's ultimate defense. Another swing and the Azura path started running away, letting out small chakra blasts and the occasional missile. Now closed her eyes and took a deep breath in deep concentration. She snapped her eyes open, immediately locking his position. Amaterasu, a wave of black flames exploded on the Azura path, who fell to the ground. Now narrowed her eyes when she saw his bones shifting under his skin. The arm burning with the black flames of Amaterasu simply fell to the ground like some disposable object. She watched as another mechanical arm took his place like nothing had ever happened. Looks like I need to either destroy his body completely or take out the chakra receivers, now mused in thought as she watched the Azura path point his arm at her and forming a fist. His fist detached itself from his arm before rocketing towards her. The fist missile crashed against her Susanoo and yet again, nothing but smoke. This is getting nowhere, now thought with disappointment. They were at a standstill. Her only way of winning was with destroy his body with her Susanoo, but he was too slippery for her to hit him. Kane Bodhi, flame body, now thought, dropping her shield and channeling fire chakra through her body, making it explode with fire. She bent her knees before throwing herself forward towards the Azura path. Kasai no Ken, fire fist, her right fist glowed a dark orange as she swung her arm at her opponent. The Azura path simply tilted backwards, watching the trail of flames her fist left behind. Now thrust her left arm forward. Hidama, fireball, a small fireball exploded from her arm, hitting the Azura path straight in the head. Knowing that such attack wouldn't stop his mechanized body, she rose her leg to kick him. The Azura path swiftly caught her leg by the ankle and threw her away like some ragdoll. Now twisted midair and landed safely on the ground. Her eyes started glowing once again and her reddish aura of fire started darkening into a menacing pure black. Amaterasu no Yoroi now said, standing there with her body completely covered in Amaterasu flames. She's feeding her chakra into the flames to stop them from burning her, the Azura path thought, and prepared as now blurred forward. Enten Shirosenkai, Inferno-style swirling death, now arrived near the Azura path and unleashed a flurry of kicks and punches so fast that the Azura path was finding himself pushed back. He couldn't block those attacks or he would be hit with the powerful black flames. Enten Hayo Arakuru, Inferno-style raging fire, the Azura path's eyes widened when now unleashed a wave of black flames from her arms. The Azura path pointed both arms forward and released a couple chakra blasts to dispel the attack. He watched as the flames fell to the ground and started eating away the rock. Now swung her arms wildly and watched as a ring of fire appeared in the battlefield,
trapping both shinobi inside it. It didn't take long for the flames to grow tall and easily block their view of the outside. "You won't be going anywhere now," smirked, flexing her arms. The Azura Path scoffed at her pointless threats. He was, after all, a dead body, being reanimated with the Six Paths technique, and should he ever be destroyed, Nagato could easily put his body back together. Shura no Ko, the Azura Path unleashed a couple more of chakra bombs. Now twirled, avoiding a ball of chakra, and swiftly ducked another one. Now rushed forward, taking out both swords in the process. Enten Kasai Surashu, Inferno-style fire slash, now swung her blade and unleashed a black crescent wave of chakra. Now watched as her attack connected and chopped off his arm only for it to regrow once again. Now took a deep breath and channeled all the chakra she could into her leg and sword. Her swords took a darker aura, causing the black flames to increase in size and heat. She looked up and locked eyes with her target just before whispering her ultimate Kenjutsu technique. Enten Anhakishu no Jutsu, Inferno-style flame blade assassination jutsu. Her body shimmered out of existence. The Azura Path's eyes widened when he felt the surge of power and completely lost track of now. He felt a small air displacement behind his back and immediately turned back. All he caught was 7 streaks of black before now disappeared once again, back to her original position. Now smirked as the Azura Path fell to the ground in a mix of severed limbs. 7 precise and incredible powerful strikes. 1 to take his head, 1 for each arm, 1 for each leg and 2 more to his chest, essentially leaving nothing but chunks. With a final Amaterasu, she left his body to slowly burn to ashes. "Outside of Konoha this isn't very graceful," Deidara said, tired of waiting in the trees, hidden from sight. "Be quiet," Deidara Sasori reprimanded. Both Akatsuki members were outside of Konoha walls, waiting for their contact to arrive. The problem was that both of them had rather short tempers and waiting wasn't something either liked to do. "I'm just saying. These tree huggers have no respect for art," Deidara grumbled. Sasori was about to reply when 2 shinobi dropped in front of them. "Deidara and Sasori?" Toryun asked. "We are here. Don't keep us waiting anymore with worthless questions," Sasori replied harshly. Both root shinobi said nothing but merely started walking towards Konoha with both Akatsuki members in tow. "This way," Toryun said, leading his group through a more quiet entrance other than the main gates. Toryun and Fu led the Akatsuki members through the barrier that covered Konoha without raising any type of alarm. "Where are our marks?" Sasori asked, making both root members stop walking and turn to stare intently at Sasori. "We do not need to remind you of your deal with Danzasama, do we?" Fu asked, with a dangerous tone in his voice. "We will keep our end of the deal. We will draw the attention for the dragons into Kumo in exchange for the bijou," Sasori explained, and Fu nodded, resuming their path towards their objectives. Minutes later both Akatsuki members and the 2 root shinobi were standing outside of the Senju compound. They were standing a bit away so they didn't get detected. "My bugs tell me that the dragons are still in there, along with the Ichibi and the Nanabi," Toryun said. "Let's go then," Deidara said, rising from the ground but was stopped by hand on his shoulder. "Don't be foolish," Fu warned. "There are 5 seal masters living there. Anyone not authorized to enter the compound would be reduced to ashes before he could even cry in pain. We must wait for them to leave. I will interrupt the Ichibi from getting called and from there you will take charge, understood?" Toryun asked and both Deidara and Sasori nodded. With Kakashi was jumping from rooftop to rooftop, his form blurring through the buildings as he made his way to Yugao's apartment. A few minutes later Kakashi found himself standing at her front door. Unlike other shinobi, Yugo had a small apartment in a building shared with civilians. Yugo was one of the few shinobi whose house building was shared. Most shinobi preferred their privacy and usually lived in single, separate houses. This of course didn't apply to the clans. Then again, clans were usually big families and not random strangers all living together in the same building, split only by a few walls. Kakashi knocked on the door and waited patiently for a reply. Seconds quickly turned into minutes and Kakashi knocked once more. Getting no response, Kakashi leaned in, placing his head on the wooden door and listened for any sounds coming from the interior. Strange, Kakashi thought as he kneeled on the ground, standing a few inches away from the door lock. He went to his pockets and retrieved a small case, no bigger than his own hands. He set the case on the stone floor and quickly unrolled the fabric to reveal a few shining metal tools. Kakashi nearly felt like whistling as he took a thin metallic lockpick and introduced the tool into the lock. Kakashi listened and felt for the clicks as the lock's pins were placed in the right place, allowing the tumbler to rotate freely. Kakashi pocketed his tools and opened the door. The first thought that came through Kakashi's mind was amusement. Shoes tucked away in a corner, 2 swords hang neatly in a nearby wall, a small shelf filled with books, no empty room for more, and surprisingly enough, no books lying around the house other than the bookshelf. Still the same old perfectionist, Kakashi thought to himself, walking towards the room and silently opening the door. His Sharingan came to life as he gazed in the darkness of the bedroom and saw nothing more than an empty bed. Kakashi went to check the remaining rooms but found no evidence of Yugo. All of her clothes and equipment were still here, so he ruled out defecting. Kakashi was closing the door out of the apartment when his nose caught a familiar scent. Hey 8. That explains her absence in her home, Kakashi thought with a grin as he closed the door and made his way towards Hi-8's house, where he was sure he would find Yugo. It took only a couple of minutes for him to reach his new destination.
Hi-8's house was an ordinary house, but unlike Yugo, Hi-8 lived alone in the building.
Kakashi approached the door and, like any good neighbor, he politely knocked on the door and waited for someone to answer. Kakashi's eyes narrowed when his nose smelled something metallic. Blood, Kakashi concluded as he took a step back and kicked the door open, blasting the wooden door right of the hinges. The house was a mess to say the least. There was blood everywhere and signs of a small battle. Kunais and shurikens on the floor and walls, the tables were destroyed along with the chairs, pieces of the walls on the ground.
Kakashi quickly searched the house for any signs of Yugo or anyone else. The amount of blood that was sprayed around the apartment was too much for someone to survive. He chose to follow his nose, trailing the scent of blood to its source. Kakashi quickly reached another door, presumably to Hi-8's bedroom, and decided to take caution.
Something had happened here as it wasn't pretty. Kakashi stealth approached the door and slowly pushed it open, the wooden frame creaking ever so slowly. Yujo, Hi-8, Kakashi shouted as he saw his 2 comrades lying on the ground, in a pool of their own blood. He quickly rushed to their side, hoping that they would still be alive. Kakashi gingerly brought a finger to their neck and sighed in relief when he felt a pulse, a weak one at that, but a pulse nonetheless.
Kashi, Yugo muttered weakly, barely able to part her lips. Hi-8 seemed to be in even worse state, completely unconscious.
They were lucky to have fallen unconscious with their wounds facing the floor, somewhat stemming the blood flow. Kakashi did a quick overall scan of the room and found another person lying in a nearby corner with a sword driven through his chest. An assassin, Kakashi mused in thought, noticing a single white mask on the attacker's face and simple ANBU clothing. Shadow clone jutsu, Kakashi said, making a clone of himself and hoisting Yugo over his shoulders, with one hand applying pressure to her wounds.
Kakashi's clone did the same with Hi-8 as both dashed towards the hospital.
During their way, Kakashi made another clone to inform the Hokage that someone had targeted her bodyguard. While Yugo was jounin and one of the best, there were far more likely targets for an assassination inside the village.
Everyone knew that Yugo was an ANBU, but a mere few knew that she the Hokage's bodyguard.
Just thinking that someone had found their identities and made a move on them was troubling enough. With Akatsuki en route now, Torian shouted as the 4 members stormed the Senju compound. Gaara was about to respond to Naruto's summon when a swarm of bugs burst from the ground, ripping through the wooden floor.
Futon de Tapa, great breakthrough. Gaara took a deep breath and unleashed a powerful gust of wind, breaking the swarm and pushing the insects backwards. Without a second thought, Gaara jumped towards the window, smashing the glass and ending on the outside of the Senju compound.
Sand started flowing freely from his wrist seals as it started crushing the flying bugs. Bugs are a specialty of the Aburame clan, and Fuchan Gaara thought in confusion as to the person responsible for this attack.
Katsu Gaara's eyes widened when a white bird appeared right in front of his face and started glowing.
He barely had time to shield his face as he was blasted back, his sandskin cracking slightly due to the explosion. Gaara cursed beneath his breath as he twisted midair and landed on the ground. Boom! The ground beneath Gaara's feet suddenly exploded, covering his form in smoke. All done, Deidara smirked, coming down from the sky on top of his clay bird. His cocky smirk was quickly wiped from his face when the smoke cleared, and instead of battered Gaara, he found a solid cocoon of sand on its place.
Akatsuki, is it? Gaara asked rhetorically as the sand cocoon opened slowly to show his neutral face.
You are either very brave or very stupid to attack the one of the 5 great elemental nations on broad daylight, Gaara said, stepping on top of a small chunk of sand and started floating into the air.
Deidara was not happy his plan hadn't worked.
Now he had to actually fight the Ichibi Jinchuriki.
Looks like my plan failed, Deidara grumbled in disappointment. Gaara was about to reply when they felt the ground starting to rumble. Gaara's eyes widened when he felt a massive spike of chakra, and his head snapped to his left just in time to see a wall of the Senju compound being blasted open by a small Bijidama.
Bastard! A deep voice came from inside the compound as Sasori came running from inside. Fu stepped outside slowly, in her 5-tailed Jinchuriki state.
Piercing green eyes, dark blue chakra cloak.
The ground cracked as Fu shot forward, heading straight towards Sasori.
Gaara's eyes followed Fu as her Bijou-empowered fist crashed into Sasori's form, obliterating the Akatsuki member into pieces.
They are not alone, Fu-chan. Be careful, Gaara warned, remembering the swarm that nearly overwhelmed him earlier.
Let me out, I want to play, to Shikaku yelled from inside Gaara's mind.
This is no time for jokes.
They are attacking us and Kanoma isn't responding. Fu's attack should have drawn a lot of attention, Gaara replied, and Shikaku frowned.
I haven't used this body in years. A voice broke Gaara from his thoughts as his eyes turned to the new voice. Sasori of the Red Sand.
I wondered when you would show your face to us, Gaara said. You are well informed, Sabaku no, Gaara, Sasori replied, stretching his wooden limbs. We know more about your organization than you could ever hope to think, Gaara said.
Fu slowly made her way towards his side as more sand started pouring from his storage seals.
Fu-chan, are you in control? Gaara asked towards his partner in Bijou form.
Yes, Fu snarled at the Akatsuki members.
Go, Gaara said, raising a wave of sand as Fu roared and dashed forward. Deidara's bird quickly flew high into the sky, out of range from Gaara's sand.
Sasori disposed of his Akatsuki cloak to reveal his puppet body. From his back came several metal blades that blocked Fu's punch.
Roar, Fu roared, releasing a shockwave that pushed Sasori backwards and cracked the ground from the pressure. Sasori skidded through the ground until he stopped. TSK Sasori sighed beneath his breath as he took his favorite puppet. Things weren't supposed to be like this, there wasn't supposed to be a battle in the first place. Satetsu Shigure, Iron Sand Rain, Sasori's puppet, also known as the Sandaime Kazekage, opened his mouth, releasing a cloud of black grains of iron. Satetsu Keshu, Iron Sand Gathering.
The iron sand started compressing into high-density shapes, the size of small houses, as they hovered in the air. With a flick of wrist, Sasori commanded his puppet to send the barrage of chunks of iron towards Fu. Fu watched as the weapons of iron quickly approached, and she bent her knees, disappearing from her position with a loud swoosh sound. Sasori took an involuntary step back when he lost track of Fu. He caught movement in the corner of his eyes and formed a metallic sheet of iron in front of him, just in time to block a Bijou-powered fist from Fu. Her punch connected with Sasori's defense with a loud bang, the sound reverberating through the air, a testament to both the power of the strike and the sturdiness of Sasori's shield. Katsu, Deidara yelled as dozens of white clay bombs surrounded Fu and exploded. Deidara narrowed his eyes and scoffed when he noticed Fu completely enclosed in sand, protecting her from the blast.
Roar, Sasori's eyes widened in shock when the sand dome opened and a bright glow emanated from the inside.
Bijudama Fu released a tailed beast bomb at point-blank range. When the smoke cleared, there was no puppet or puppeteer to be seen.
Fu took a whiff of the air and her head snapped to the sky, where she saw Deidara flying on his bird with Sasori next to him, with a missing arm.
We cannot fight them head-on, Sasori said, looking at his missing arm.
They have too much raw power for either of us in that case, Deidara grinned as his hands flew to his bags on his legs. He took out a big chunk of clay and started molding it. C3, Deidara yelled, throwing his creation into the sky. With a single hand seal, his creation increased in volume, taking the size of a small building, and started plummeting to the ground. Gaara's eyes widened at the sheer magnitude on the incoming clay meteorite.
A bomb of that size would destroy a chunk of Konoha, Gaara thought in panic, raising his arms to the sky.
Sand started pouring out of his wrists, seals like rivers. Kusabohiki, giant sand shield, Gaara said as the sand started covering the Senju compound. A giant shield started forming itself midair, right on the path of the incoming explosive. Boommm, the explosion lit the sky and Gaara gritted his teeth, pouring more power into the shield to protect the village from the blast. Once the explosion had cleared, Gaara took a deep breath as fell to his knees. He poured too much chakra into the technique to defend the village. Give some chakra, Gaara said to Shikako, huffing as he kneeled on the ground for support. Now you want my help, Shikako snarled at his Jinchuriki. Please, Gaara said, and Shikako scoffed. Fine, but it will take a while to replenish your chakra reserves. Even with me helping, Shikako replied and allowed some his chakra to seep into Gaara's network, slowly refilling his reserves. Whoa, Deidara shouted, forcing his clay bird to bank left all of a sudden as a tailed beast ball barely grazed them. Deidara started evasive maneuvers as Fu started firing multiple bijudamas against the bird, trying to bring them to ground level. She looked towards Gaara and saw him slowly regaining his breathing. Gaara's attention turned to the incoming voice as two Umbu squads arrived at their position. Reinforcements? Sasori rhetorically asked. It was bound to happen with all the ruckus you made, Sasori said towards Deidara, who huffed in defiance. Does it matter? Deidara grumbled. Let's just take the Jinchurikis and be done with this, helper, Gaara said, slowly regaining his breathing. Gaara watched as one Umbu group dashed after Fu, and before Gaara could explain what was happening, one of the Umbu slapped a bijou suppression seal on Fu's body. Fu roared as Komiai's chakra was suppressed and the link to her bijou closed off. What are you doing? Gaara yelled as the remaining Umbu squad tried to the same with him. Gaara was lucky to have his sand that automatically pushed the Umbu back. Gaara's mobility was still impaired by the heavy usage of chakra and he didn't have many options left. Whoever these Umbu were, they were in working with the Akatsuki. Gaara was forced to jump backwards as the Umbu group engaged offensive actions against him. What is happening? Gaara thought as he dodged another sword strike. His eyes turned towards Fu's unconscious form, her body being loaded into Deidara's bird. Konoha has been compromised. And the rest of the group was drawn into another battle, Gaara thought, pondering his options. 2 Akatsuki members along 8 Umbu members were too much for him now that he was drained. Gaara did the only thing he could in this situation. He channeled what chakra he had available and shined away from the battlefield. Oi, Deidara yelled when he noticed Gaara disappearing in a tornado of sand. The Achibi is running away, forget about him, Deidara. We will use the Nanabai as bait, he will come for her, Sasori explained, but Deidara grumbled nonetheless before accepting the facts. Sasori jumped on top of Deidara's bird as the two flew away from Konoha, knowing that Gaara wouldn't take long to come after them. With Gaara cancelled his shunshin due to lack of chakra, arriving a few miles away from the Senju compound and collapsing against a tree, taking deep breaths. He looked over his shoulder, scanning his surroundings for any possible shinobi. He could trust very few people if Konoha's ANBU had been compromised. Gaara looked at the sky and noticed a white bird hovering around Konoha and flying away. Gaara strained his eyes at the bird itself and saw Fu's limp form on the bird. I'll need help, Gaara said out loud before dashing towards the only place he knew he would get help to rescue Fu. What's taking so long? Gaara asked towards his bijou. Well, excuse me for not being able to flush your system with chakra like the Kyuubi, Shikako snarled. Just keep giving me what you can, Gaara replied, trying to avoid conflict with the raccoon and his mood swings. Gaara stood up, having regained his breath, and run off towards the Aburane compound. The shunshin was out of the question, he had used what little he had left to get away from the Akatsuki. Aburane compound pushed them back into the woods, Shibi yelled to his clan. All of a sudden his compound was being swarmed by 2 Umbu squads. Hijitsu, Mushitatsumaki, insect tornado, Shino said as the bugs surrounded the enemy and started spinning around them at high speeds. As the tornado was spinning, each bug took a bite of each one of the ANBU. It was mere moments later that the ANBU were all but disintegrated. It's done, Shibi said, taking a deep breaths and falling to his knees. RGHHH, Shibi suddenly began yelling in pain and fell to the ground, squirming in pain. Father! Shino yelled, rushing his father as well some members of the clan. What's happening? Some member asked,
clearly wondering what was happening to their leader.
Shino laid his father flat on the ground and ripped his chest's clothes to display a growing purple spot in the middle of his chest.
"Rinkachu, phosphorus destruction insect," Shino simply said, ignoring the gasps of everyone around them. Rinkachu, a rare breed of nano-sized, venomous insects that destroy the body's cells, causing excruciating pain in the process.
"Take him to the hospital, it's too late for that."
"We would never make in time," Shino replied, ignoring the protests of the rest of the clan. As Shino Shibi gasped, reaching for his son and bringing his closer.
"The clan.it Septadatu," Shibi whispered, dying, and his arm dropping limp to the side.
The Aburame clan, a clan that valued logic above all, a clan that taught each member to bury emotions, to remain objective on the field.
Even having been taught all that, Shino couldn't help but let out a small tear. "Damn it," Shino swore, punching the ground.
"Report the attack to the Hokage," Shino said, but neither member moved. Now he snarled, startling everyone around him. The members scattered to fix the damage that had been done to the compound and to report to the Hokage.
Shino sighed and picked his father's body.
He didn't need to worry about the Rinkachu since they went destroyed themselves once the host they fed upon had died. Shino quickly made his way towards the compound, a small walk but it felt like miles.
Shino arrived near his house and looked as the door opened. "Shino?" A female voice appeared on the other side.
Nushi whispered when she saw Shibi's limp form being carried in his son's arms. "Shibi," she yelled, rushing towards them. Shino stopped and lowered his father to the ground, allowing his mother to envelop Shibi in a desperate hug.
"Sorry," Shino said, his voice raspy and dry.
"They took us by surprise and one of the attackers was one of us," Shino whispered, watching his mother swallow herself in grief at the death of her husband.
"He's a better place now," Shino offered, feeling completely helpless.
He had already accepted his father's death and was trying his best to help his mother. "Stop rationalizing everything," his mother yelled, her eyes red with tears.
"He was your father and you can't even spare a tear in his honor. Do you even feel anything for us?"
his mother asked. "I would sacrifice anything for my family," Shino replied instantly and immediately snapped to attention.
"Stay behind me," Shino ordered, feeling a presence rapidly approaching the compound.
His eyes looked around until he caught Gaara approaching and the first thing he noticed was his state. Sweat dropping from his face and his chest weaving heavily.
"What happened?" Shino asked, shouldering Gaara so he didn't fall to the ground. "Akatsuki," Gaara replied and Shino was immediately on alert.
"They took Fu," Gaara said softly and Shino's heart sank.
"First his father and now Fu."
"Where?"
Shino simply asked, but Gaara noticed the slight edge on his voice. Gaara looked to the ground and his eyes widened when he saw Shino's father dead.
"You were attacked as well," Gaara said and Shino nodded. Looks like it had been a joint attack on the clans of the village.
Gaara could only speculate on the goal of everything. "Rest," Shino said and lowered Gaara to the ground. "What are we going to do?" Gaara asked, finally being able to rest for a few minutes.
"We are going after Fu," Shino simply said and started walking away.
"Wait for me to come back," Shino said and Gaara nodded in acknowledgement.
"Mothgo," his mother interrupted him. "Give them hell for me," his mother smiled sadly and Shino nodded. Aburame Hive Shino arrived at the center of the woods surrounding his compound. He slowly entered the room and made his way towards the center of the room. As he walked, he looked around to see several hives all around the room. Here was where they grew their bugs, and where they performed the ceremony on the newborn.
Shino stopped right in front of a large box. It was just an ordinary box, standing in a simple wooden desk. While seemingly plain, this box had etched a single word on the front.
Forbidden. Shino paid no second thought and opened the box, taking the jar out and gently lowering it to the table. Shino placed a hand on the lid and hesitated ever so slightly, before picking up the jar and smashing it on the ground. As the jar shattered on the hard floor, a large swarm of bugs burst from it, immediately accessing the threat and completely covering Shino from head to toe in a shroud of darkness. Shino gritted his teeth in pain but did not waver for even a second on his decision. "You took my father from me," Shino said, dropping to his knees. "But with you, I will rescue Fu," Shino replied, his eyes burning with fire and the bugs seemed to feel his power and determination. The swarm slowed down and began slowly flying around him. The bugs landed softly on him and started slithering their way into his skin.
Shino dropped his black goggles to the ground and slowly stood up.
His skin was now a deep purple and his eyes shining a bright silver.
Let's go hunting.